I'm not worried about adding muscle in the off-season. I know that's going to be a byproduct of what we do, but my whole approach in the off-season is teaching your body to learn to just digest and assimilate the massive amount of clean food.
Get to a place to where you can basically eat whatever you want but not gain weight.
Yeah.
You know, get to that point and do it moderately. I mean, you don't do it in 2 days.
Yeah.
You're going to keep gaining weight. Then once they get there, that should be their point.
Basically, the more good, clean, bodybuilding food you can digest and assimilate, the more one potential for muscle growth you have, and two, the better metabolism you have, which is going to improve your contest prep and preserve more muscle in the contest.
And my guest today is Justin Harris. Justin and I go back, God, we're probably to a point now where we don't want to tell people how long it's been. Probably over a decade, where
15 almost.
15,
yeah.
15 years. Basically, I'm trying to say this without sounding like we had this intimate relationship. Basically, Justin came into my life, shortly after I retired from powerlifting. And some of this he knows, some of it he doesn't know. He was brought on to the team because one of my advisors at the time saw Justin lifting a powerlifting meet, and it was shortly after, I think within a year after winning the Junior USAs. You were in off season, getting ready to prep for North Americans or the USAs? The USAs. And basically just jumped into a meet. He had some metal gear, but he had no idea what the hell he was doing. So everything was loose, didn't really help so much, but ended up totaling well over his elite. So it kind of put it on the radar. And then Mike Sederic got a hold of me and said, hey, you might want to check this guy out. And looked him up and saw that, he was a prep coach at the time before there were even people called prep coaches, helping people with prepping for shows, old school way with probably a landline telephone.
Oh yeah, we used to mail photos in the mail.
Kicking back on the couch. And right around that time is, like I said, it was the time that I retired from the sport of powerlifting because multiple reasons, but injuries, let's just put it that way. And I guess you could say I was going through a meathead identity crisis at the time, and I needed something. It's like, man, I need something to do that's challenging and hard. So we were talking when I was actually, for probably the second conversation I had with Justin, it was something with pro bodybuilding, and it was happening more back then than I see today. People would turn pro and within the first year put on like 15, 20, some people even 30 pounds of lean body mass in a year. And I was trying, for those that don't understand bodybuilding but you understand powerlifting, that would be like getting your elite total and then within the next year putting 40% on that elite total. I mean, it's like ridiculous. Like, you're already at the top, and I knew it couldn't be drugs because they had to take everything possible to turn pro.
They were already pro.
They're already pro. So, and I'm sure the people who are trying to be pro are doing more drastic things than the people who are pro. So I couldn't figure out, what it was, and I asked him, and his reply was something along the lines, well, it's easier for me just to kind of show you than, to actually explain it all. Like, fine, fuck it, I'll do it. And then so we spent the next, that was about a year, because I was as fat as I am now. Maybe not so fat, but close. I mean, I had a lot of body fat to lose, but I also had a lot of muscle that was in there. So by the time, and I did tell him from the start, I did not want to be any closer than 4 weeks away from a show, because I've done shows before and I knew that sucks. And so we managed to do that, and brought him on the team at the time. So while this was all going on, kind of just between him and I, me learning And it wasn't a pharmaceutical thing. So I want to put it out there. It wasn't a pharmaceutical thing. Actually, it was a carb cycling thing. It was habits, really, is diligent habits and almost becoming a robot to where everything is regulated. I can remember not going into Columbus because I didn't want to pack a cooler and it would take me too long to get there and back before my next meal. And then under a certain body fat percentage, and I remember this because I dieted down 4 or 5 times, once I got under 8% calipered, my brain quit working.
Oh yeah.
You know, well, it would work after I ate for a half hour.
Yeah.
Then I would stare at a wall for an hour and a half. And meanwhile, he's on our Q&A answering questions about nutrition, and carb cycling was a really big thing back then. And even intra was, but it wasn't called intra, you know, because it was the waxy maize was, you know, the high molecular weight carbohydrates were basically the talk of the town at the time. And God, you probably got more questions on that than anything else. Yeah. But I do remember, you know, there were some funny ones too. And then we'll start getting into some of the actual content. But there was one that somebody asked him, like, we got these blender bottles now, and I'm not trying to sell the blender bottles, even though we do sell the blender bottles. But if you look at the blender bottles now, they're kind of rounded in the bottom of all the blender bottles. That's so your protein doesn't get stuck in the bottom corners. And I remember Justin telling me that he had a client, actually several clients, that asked him what to do with the little bit of protein that was stuck in the blender bottle, because it had to be like 1/4 gram of protein. And it's so I was never to that extent. I was compliant to my way of being compliant. So I would come up with my own ways to do things, but that's kind of how we met, and then progressed forward where the powerlifting community actually started to pivot a little bit and to think a little bit more about nutrition. And I think they were thinking, and you were educating in a realistic manner. It wasn't like you were saying you have to eat X, Y, Z. It's like you just need to eat food.
Yeah.
You know, you just need to get enough calories. You just need to eat food. You took what everybody already knew and said it in a way that they understood, because you were strong, big, jacked, and could say it intelligently, where everybody else is just saying, dude, if you're trying to gain weight, you really don't need to fucking worry about any of this crap. You're covering everything. Now, if you're trying to cut a weight class, things are different, you know, and kind of going on from there. And then started to get an influx of, what do we want to call them, powerlifting transformation specialists. You know, people like myself that would diet down, get lean, then get fat, and never get lean again. So you went through those phases, and then you decided to step out of the industry, kind of.
No, I did, yeah.
And it was,
regretfully, but yeah, I did.
Yeah, and that was it was for your education.
Yeah, I went back to grad school.
So you went back to grad school you already had your master's though, right?
No, I have a lot of college. I never finished a master's at that point.
Yeah.
It was all nutrition and exercise science at that point. And so I decided to completely change course and do math and physics. And so at that point I was starting over from scratch, having never even taken a college physics course. So I guess I didn't really start back in grad school. I started back, took a bunch of math and physics classes, and then took the physics GRE and applied to grad school. And so, I didn't go through the full undergrad, but I did a couple years of basically a second undergrad also.
Now, when you were competing, you were working as...
echocardiographer.
Yes, so reading echoes
Yeah.
and the heart. So I want to put that out there because, you know, one of the rants that I've been on for the past couple months is that if you compete at a high level, you can still fucking work and earn it and get a degree and build a profession. And, you know, here you're reading echoes Which is, now you just don't go into the hospital and say, here's my job application, let me do this, so he was. Did you have to get certification? I mean, license?
Yes. I've never actually worked in a field that I have a degree in.
But you needed a license to.
You were supposed to.
Yeah.
Hopefully, Beaumont Hospital is not paying attention to this. Yeah. But I never did that. I took I took a 4-day course in Philadelphia. It was continuing education for people who already had the degree, and was lucky enough to, I guess, not get noticed when on my application, or I think actually when I first hired on, you didn't quite have to be officially certified. I don't remember how it worked, and so I got lucky to get in without actually having the degree. I mean, I had the degree in exercise science, but I did not have a degree in echocardiography. So.
Well, a point I should probably put out there so people understand this is, we've already established that I've known Justin for 15 years. He's not an idiot. He's very extremely intelligent, where he can self-teach himself probably better than you would learn. Let's say you wanted to get your MBA. You could probably self-teach yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if that's unique. I mean, I appreciate the comment. But yeah, I mean, I think when you're self-teaching, it's something that you're obsessed with, and so you'll sit and read it for 8 hours a day. Where if you're forced to learn it in a school setting, it feels like a chore rather than an interest.
So when it was going back for mathematics and physics, what was your intent? What was the desire? What was the outcome that you were hoping? I was kind of frustrated with, at the time it was all forums, there wasn't really social media. I was kind of frustrated that arguments on nutrition and science and things in regarding to bodybuilding and powerlifting would basically boil down to who was willing to argue the long enough, who was willing to type it in all capitals, And most of the people listening or reading weren't experts in the field. And so it would be very frustrating that, you'd discuss something that was, not disputable. The science, not even the science is 150 years old, something like thermodynamics, that net total calories dictate how body mass is stored in the body. And someone would argue that, and the people reading it aren't nutritionists. And so they just eventually agree with whoever's willing to argue the longest. And I kind of thought, well, geez, what field doesn't have that? And I thought, I guess the purest science there is math and physics. And I was getting out of bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I was kind of looking for a new challenge. And I didn't really, at the time, I thought I could do it and go to grad school and get a PhD in physics or math and still continue with, the bodybuilding and everything. And it didn't quite work out that way. But that was the thinking. It was short-sighted in that there was no long-term hope, like, I want to be a professor. It was, this is really interesting. As I tend to do, I'm completely obsessed with this. This is all I want to do all day long is read about this. Maybe rather than just read about it and have nothing to show for it, maybe I should get a degree. And that's really what it stemmed from. Just kind of I tend to get obsessed on weird tangents, and that was one of them. And right before that, it was, you were having like a muscle wasting. I want to say fibromyalgia, but it wasn't that. But you couldn't train.
No, I was having the weirdest thing. It ended up. We can go into this deeper because I just had another recent issue, possibly an autoimmune type thing, but it seems to have been celiac, which I'm hesitant to comment on because everyone loves to make fun of the gluten-free crowd, but it turned out I have celiac disease, and so all the food I was eating was just, I was running a fever for almost 2 years straight, a low-grade fever, and all these aches and pains, and it got to where I couldn't work out because I would just be crippled. I'd had to have the flu immediately after every workout, and it was, it's like, since I got my first weight set when I was 7, so the only thing I really remember my whole life was wanting to lift weights, and so having that taken away was really tough, I guess. And I think, I don't know if it was the math and physics kind of grabbed me as much as I was looking for something else to become obsessed with when my baby was taken away from me, basically. Yeah, so I was having weird autoimmune stuff that I don't know if it's completely only the celiac, but that's what, I got diagnosed as having lupus at one point, a bunch of weird things, but it seemed like completely removing gluten from my diet removed the inflammation enough where now I don't run low-grade fevers.
How long did you have to remove it before you noticed a difference in your training?
Oh, pretty cool. I mean, I don't know, maybe not the training, but as far as like daily life was almost immediately. And I can even say exactly what happened. I was having all these issues. They didn't know what was going on. Like I said, one doctor said I had lupus, and another doctor said, no, you can't have lupus. We went out and did something with my wife's family or something, and I had like 3 beers. And the next morning, I was completely hungover, and I thought, God, what's wrong with me? 3 beers, And something clicked in my wife's head, and she thought she thought celiac. My wife's a dentist, so she, she has a medical background, strong medical background. And so I was like, well, I'll try anything. And it was almost immediate as far as feeling better. The fever started going away. And then training, I don't remember, I feel like it was pretty much immediate. Like within, I was able to work out again and more or less be normal almost immediately. Maybe a week or 2.
Really?
Yeah.
So it came back.
Yeah. I mean, it was 10 years ago now, so it's hard to remember exactly how.
But I remember the struggle, because the struggle was a couple years.
At least it was 2 years of every day having a low-grade fever, And it was, because I did my last powerlifting meet in 2008, and there was a while there where I was trying things that I thought might be causing inflammation. Like I was trying to do no supplements for a while, and that wasn't working. And 2008 was my last powerlifting meet where, I mean, I had a great meet, but my training was terrible before that. And that was in the spring, and it was probably late 2010 before I finally got it figured out. So it was 2.5 years of, I mean, for a while I completely stopped training, which was really, really rough to do. And I was completely lost, and I had it was, looking back, it's like, I'm sure I was depressed. I don't think I realized as much at the time, but looking back, it's really depressing to even think about, because I feel like there was like a period of my life where I was a different person. I wasn't me. And I think largely it's because the only period of my life where the gym wasn't like a cornerstone of my life was that, that period of probably 1.5 years or more where there was really no training at all. And I was just lost as a person.
So what's going to happen if that day comes and you can't train?
That's like every meathead. I just think you'll deal with it when it happens. It's like, it's like, am I going to need to be on hormone therapy the rest of my life? I'll deal with that when it's, what happens like with hip replacements, or, we'll just grind this one until I can't grind it anymore. And then so I guess I don't know what'll happen. But I think about that a lot, because I can't imagine being 70 years old and still, stay, because when you're really excited about training, it's like the night before a big workout, you have trouble sleeping. It's like Christmas morning, and that's a cool thing to have in your life, because I don't think most people have it. So I think about it at some point in the future when that's going to happen. I don't know. I'll probably try to latch on to some dumb hobby that I'm not really interested in and convince myself that I am. Yeah. I mean, I really don't know.
Yeah, it is. It's, for me, it was an identity crisis. Like I said, and then it was, jumping in and working with you. Then it was, going to Shelby and then going to John, and then, after the hips, and all of a sudden it was like, what, maybe this isn't actually me. Maybe it's just like J.M. Blakely, when I did the podcast with him, came straight out and said, nah, it's what you do. It's not you. And it resonates, and you think about it, and it's true, but it's a big part, of what you do. And when it's a big part of what you do.
Well, for me, it's just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just a total personality regulator. I'm not like a mean person, or I don't get upset, but if I'm ever having a bad day, feel like shit, I don't know, feel down, feel stressed, no matter what, no matter how terrible I feel, I know that if I go and train, that after the workout, it's going to be completely reversed. And that's for me. Most people don't have anything like that in their life, and I can think of multiple times just in the last month or two where you felt like crap, feel sick. Maybe the kids are screaming, you're just in a shitty mood, and you don't want to train. You're tired. You just want to take a nap. You drag yourself to the gym, and by the end of the workout, like I took a drug. I feel like stoned with happiness, and so I don't.
Yeah, so it's. I'll throw it back again, is what happens when it's taken away. It's because it's, it's that I can make suggestions because I've been through it, but I don't know what your competitive, are you, and one of the questions that I did see is, are you planning on competing again?
I don't think my wife would want me to. I mean, I know she wouldn't. I don't know. I don't want to say no because I've competed my whole life. I remember the first things I remember was playing t-ball.
Yeah. I'm talking bodybuilding.
I know. It's what it's hard for me. I don't want to think of a future that might be 40 years of future without a competition.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I'll compete again, but I don't like to say that because to me that was, I don't know, that's how you affirm yourself in life, is that there's this thing that I'm passionate about, and to prove I'm more passionate about it than other people, I go and beat them in some competition.
Yeah.
And to not have that it's hard for me to say. I don't think I'll compete again, but I really don't like saying that because I like the idea of, now I'm 40. I like the idea of saying, well, there's lots of 40-year-olds who work out. Let me prove that I do it better than them, or I do it harder than them, or I care about it more. And the only really way to do that isn't in competition. But I don't think I'll compete again. I just don't like to say that.
When are the Masters Nationals?
They just happen.
Okay.
I know right when they are every year. Yeah.
All right.
Mid-July.
All right. So because I know what shows, I know which ones, because John went through all that.
Yeah.
To try to get his pro card.
They're fairly close to my hometown as far, it's not like Vegas or Miami. Yeah.
Yeah. But the bodybuilding is different from a time management standpoint than powerlifting. So when you're talking straight competing, bodybuilding is a 100% pivot in lifestyle.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is you put everything on hold for not just weeks or days, or it's months.
Yeah, it's completely, and it's every day. It's work. Everything gets put on hold. Which the better question would be: are you willing to put everything on hold for 4 months?
I don't. Right now, I have too many great things in my life. It's work, with my kids and family, and everything's that we're building a home. Right now, I'm not willing to. It doesn't mean I'd never be willing to, but right now, but again, there's never a good time. So I like to think that right now isn't the perfect time. Maybe there will be a time. There might not ever be a time, but I don't. The idea of completely shutting it off is hard for me to do, even though it's likely.
Yeah, some of the. Just a couple of things I'll throw out there that kind of helped me with not having training becoming or not being my complete identity. It's kind of the opposite of what a lot of people that you've already done. Like, how many times have you walked in the gym and just not trained? Probably never.
No.
No. Even with my hip, when I couldn't train, I'd walk in the gym, I would grab the barbell just to feel the knurling and then walk back out. Because my fear was, if I'm out of here for more than 4 weeks in a row, I might not come back.
Yeah.
But sometimes, if it's somebody that is using training as, and I don't think you're using it as your only coping mechanism. So I'm framing this as somebody who only uses training as their coping mechanism. Sometimes it might be better for them when they have that night where they're, man, I can't wait to train. I can't wait to train. I can't wait. That next day, don't train. Go find something else to do. And then slowly they learned how to cope without having to deal, to use that with that. Or it's a different type. You just go for a walk.
Yeah.
You don't go in the gym. But
it sounds like an addiction, like an AA meeting. Like.
It is. Well, it is.
Yeah,
it actually is. But like I said, I know you well enough that I know it's not your only coping mechanism. It can't be, because you're running a business. You got kids. You got a family. You got all these things going on. If it was your only coping mechanism, you'd be training 8 hours a day. There's too much shit going on throughout the whole day. Or it's 10 o'clock at night, you're like, you'd have to go to the gym. Well, you can't.
Yeah.
You watch some stupid show on Netflix, you find some other way to be able to go about doing that. So I don't want to get into what brought you back into I don't want to say I'm going to say consulting industry, because I hate the word the fitness. And to me, the fitness industry and the strength industry are two and completely, they're different worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fitness industry, I don't like it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm trying to be as polite as I can possibly be. I think 90% of that's just trying to rip people off.
Yeah.
All right. Then now when you're dealing with the strength industry and strength sport industry.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I'm going to say, you know, bodybuilding, all forms of bodybuilding, all forms of powerlifting. You know, I guess CrossFit kind of fits in there if it's confetti. You know, it's now you're dealing with, there's still people out there
mm-hmm.
that are trying to rip people off, but it's not 90%.
Yeah.
It's like 60%. You know, it's 70%. I mean, most of the people out there are generally really want to try to help other people. You know, the ones that are, to be completely transparent, the ones that I think people need to be most afraid of are the competitors that are doing the prepping, mm-hmm. online prepping, online coaching, because the only reason they're doing it is to be able to buy their drugs and pay for their sport. That's it. They're not doing it to help anybody.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing it just for that. Because if it wasn't for that, you know, if they weren't competing, mm-hmm. they wouldn't be training people.
Yeah.
You know, it's that simple, because you see it happen as soon as they get hurt or they stop competing. Well, now they're no longer, you know, the prep guy. You know, so actually the worst people are the ones that don't know anything. But I think I think a lot of us don't give people credit enough to be able to vet out the complete morons.
Well, that's the thing. I think that's the big difference between like the sports, the competitive portion of the industry, and the fitness industry. The fitness industry, you're able to prey on people who know nothing.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with people prepping for a bodybuilding contest or powerlifting meet or something like that, you're dealing with people who are at least deep enough in the sport that they're looking to be competitive against other people who are in the sport. So they're probably not clueless. I mean, it's you know, like if you say when I picture fitness industry, I picture you know, middle-aged woman sitting on the couch watching, you know, one of those infomercials for some weird banded thing that you can buy, or that thigh thing that mm-hmm. Suzanne Summers mm-hmm. uses, you know, something that they're looking for a quick fix and they know nothing about anything, and it's simply, it's nothing more than a way to take their money really quickly and get out.
Health club sales.
Yeah. Well, the best health, the highest performing health club is going to be the one that doesn't have any members that actually go to the gym.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So what brought you back into the consulting? Was it a certain person asked you and you're like, fuck, I don't know.
Kind of was, actually, to be honest. You know, because I was out for a while, and at this point I had, you know, finished school, and I knew I didn't want to do physics. It was, you know, towards the end I knew I didn't want to. I just got out, you know, with the degree and left. And it was actually someone named Emmett Brown, who was just a local young kid, maybe 22, I don't remember. He lives in California now, but you know, he was somehow knew me from my previous time, and I thought I'd been out for 5 years. I thought no one remembered who I was, mm-hmm. and I actually felt like, wow, that was probably one of the cooler moments of my life, to realize that someone actually, what I did 5 years ago, still like stuck around. And he's like, oh, you got to coach again. I said, how am I going to? I said, no one's, you know, I was on the forums. That's what people. No, mm-hmm. I'm not on social media. I said, no one's going to know who I am. And he's like, everyone remembers who you are. And I thought, I can't believe that. And so he's like, well, let me make a post on Instagram or Facebook. I don't remember which one, and you'll see if people will seem like they'd be excited, then maybe you should go do it. And I said, yeah, sure. He did make a post, and people posted like, oh yeah, that's really cool. And it started like kind of traveling around, and I saw it shared a bunch of times. I thought, wow, that's, you know, that was probably one of the like cooler moments of my life, because I was really kind of, I don't want to say depressed, but it was like I took this sidetrack thinking my lifting career was over, and I thought I was trying to take another path that would be fulfilling, and I was at a point in that path where I was, you know, done with the degree, and I realized it wasn't fulfilling and it wasn't what I wanted to do, and I felt like, great, now what do I do? Now I find some corporate job that I'm going to hate, and to realize that previous path that I was missing, there was still some, you know, affection there, was, you know, it was really cool. And so I was like, well, let me, you know, I went online, found the cheapest free website software you could, and started up the website, and it grew really quickly, and it's still growing, and it's it's bigger than it's ever been, actually. I mean,
It's a bigger market.
Yeah. Oh, it's a huge market. Well, that's when, like, people say there's no money in, I hear all the time, there's no money in bodybuilding. Right? They have more money than there's ever been. I mean, it's a, you know, you got to work for it now. You know, Joe Weider's not handing out $100,000 contracts, but, you know, but if you're, you know, if you're motivated and willing to work, there's more money than there ever was.
Well, there's more divisions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you got more divisions. You got more people that need prepped.
Yeah.
You as a coach, you need to know how to work with each division.
Yeah, and you can specialize and so that's. I mean, I don't specialize, but yeah, there's so much more, and there's there's the good thing, if I don't want to say I know what I'm doing, I believe I do, but that's up for other people to decide, I guess. But the good thing is, if you know what you're doing, there's a lot of people in the new divisions who were preyed upon by coaches who didn't know what they're doing, who will really appreciate when they find someone who does know what they're doing. I'm talking about classic bodybuilding, things like that. A lot of the guys worked with some meathead bodybuilding coach who didn't know how to prep them differently, had no understanding of what it's like to prep when you're making a weight, rather than prep just to, you know, when you actually have a weight based on your height, not like making weight for a weight class in bodybuilding where it's however much muscle you have. Don't know how to handle any of that, and they've been, you know, just kind of burned badly. And so when you end up working with someone like that, they're really appreciative that you understand the difference. So the new divisions have been really good for me, I guess.
With the divisions the way that they are, I mean, a lot of it's going to be genetic based, you know, obviously based upon that. And bodybuilding is always going to probably be one of the harder ones, because you got to take people to harder, you know, different levels. I guess the different what I'm getting at is the people who are prepping the other divisions are going to be dealing with people who they're probably taking their caloric intake far too low.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know,
that's almost always what it is. I would say, especially with good competitors, it's my job is far less telling them to work harder, it's far more keeping them from sabotaging themselves from starving or overdoing things.
Yeah, where with bodybuilding, from what I've seen, that was usually never the case. It's like they made sure in the off season to be able to push the calories with micro dieting and things that we'll talk about. You know, to be able to get their caloric set point 6,000, 6,500.
Oh yeah.
So then when they have to diet, they can start at 4,000.
Yeah.
And
well, you see a lot of especially the ones who are on social media and trying to be in too good of shape year round. You'll see guys with a decent amount of muscle eating like 1,900 or 2,100 calories a day in the off season. And it's
how can you work with that?
Well, you can't, and you can do it mathematically. I mean, there's 3,500 calories roughly in a pound of fat. So, you know, 7 times 500 is, you know, that's a pound of fat. So to lose a pound of fat, you got to be 500 calorie deficit a day. To lose 2 pounds of fat a week, you have to be 1,000 calorie deficit a day. If you're eating 1,900 calories, to lose 2 pounds of fat a week, which most people are going to need to lose in a 12 or 16 week contest prep to get truly shredded, they're eating 900 calories a day. I mean, you know, you can breathe in 900 calories if you walk past a cornfield, you know. I mean, that's straight starvation. So that's the problem, is they can't get in shape. They stay in good shape year round, but they can't get in, you know, shredded condition because the metabolism just isn't there.
And they haven't taken the time to bring it back up, you know, that's one of the things I was going to ask, is how often do you see that when somebody comes and they hire you, and you can tell just based upon height and weight and how just one image, one picture.
A good chunk of my clients are probably, you know, raising their hand right now, because outside of bodybuilding, the majority of the time it's that.
Yeah.
It's really bad, especially with social media. Anyone who's got a social media account, it's terrible. Yeah, the majority of them. So a big portion of my job now is, and I'm actually working on a lecture course on how to build a metabolism. A big portion of my job now is taking female and the new divisions for men competitors and getting a metabolism back without gaining fat. Because some of them come and it's amazing. You know, I shouldn't say it's amazing. I mean, there's countries all over the world. I mean, you can go to Ethiopia or, you know, Sudan or any place like that, and you can see people who aren't dead who also are not eating. You know, it's amazing how low the human metabolism can go and sustain life and not waste away. And so some of the metabolisms I see are just unbelievably destroyed.
It's an interesting conversation, because when we were working together for my fake bodybuilding leanest photo shoot thing. When it ended, my caloric intake was 3,800. So and you thought it was too low.
Yeah.
It was too low, but I was 242,
Yeah.
and I was still, I probably could have gone. You wanted me to compete.
You were ready. You say like 4
weeks
weeks out, but
it's
you
probably
were
2 weeks.
You were ready.
Maybe the water.
You were ready. You didn't need to lose any more fat.
But I remember after that, it was you were working on what you're talking about right now, 15 years ago, because you're like, oh, I'm like, well, what do I do now? And you just eat whatever the fuck you want for a month. You didn't expect me to go to Myrtle Beach and come back weighing 285, but which. Neither did anybody.
Well, we got you to 312 not too long ago.
Yeah, I mean, it came way up, and the whole point of that thing was, it's you have, oh God, what do you call it? It was so it's almost like super compensation.
Yeah.
It's like your body just pulls muscle and it pulls water and it holds everything. You look great for 4 weeks, and then that shit spills, and then you're a fat blob of shit, and then you might eat a mini diet.
That's my whole off-season approach, and any of my clients will tell you now is that 4 week post show. Because you can get really to your previous off-season size in that 4 weeks. So whatever your peak size was, a month after the contest, you'll be there, if not more. And then it's getting to that point, and then the next phase is transitioning to the off-season without getting fat. And so really the off-season doesn't start until 4 weeks after the contest.
Yes. And you were very adamant. It's like, here's that, whatever it is, then we're going to do a mini diet just to kind of get the water and all the other crap off. And then we have to get your calories. It was 7,000. Like, we need to get you up to 6,800 to 7,000 before we even consider trying to come back down again. And I think we got it up to 6,000.
Yeah, you were eating quite a bit, I remember.
And it was up there, and I just decided never to come back down again. But that I always took that with me, even with powerlifters that have to cut to be able to make a class. It's like, if you got to cut and you're currently right now 16 weeks out and you're eating 1,400 calories and you got to cut 15 pounds, you're not going to have enough nutrients to be able to recover from your training in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you can just do the math right there. That's a pound of fat a week minimum at 1,400 calories. Minus 500, you're 900 calories a day. I mean, you can burn 900 calories in a workout. So what do you do the rest of the 24 hours?
Yeah. So for the amateur powerlifters, I come back and say, okay, let's find a meet that's 8 weeks later. Let's take this 1,400 and start working it up to 2,300, 2,400, whatever the hell we can. I always said, and I'll let you elaborate on it more specifically, get to a place to where you can basically eat whatever you want but not gain weight. So what it's like when you got to force the food to gain weight. Get to that point and do it, moderately. I mean, you don't do it in 2 days because you're going to keep gaining weight. And then once they get there, that should be their point. But that's very amateurish, and just that's how I would explain it too.
Well, my approach for off season for bodybuilders is not trying to build muscle. I mean, building muscle happens. I mean, you're working out, you're supplementing and you're eating properly. Our goal in the off season is to turn you into a food processing machine. And basically, the more good, clean, bodybuilding food you can digest and assimilate, the more, one, potential for muscle growth you have, and two, the better metabolism you have, which is going to improve your contest prep and preserve more muscle in the contest prep. So my entire goal, I'm not worried about adding muscle in the off-season. I know that's going to be a byproduct of what we do, but my whole approach in the off-season is teaching your body to learn to just digest and assimilate a massive amount of clean food. And when I say clean food, it's really simple. I've even gone on record saying 90% of being a bodybuilder is meat and rice. Whoever, if you want to be 90 or 95% of the bodybuilder you could be, you can not read another thing, pick any workout you like to do, train moderately hard, train reasonably hard, and I can go into depth why I think training is really the least important aspect, and you can take a logical conclusion to that. But train hard enough to stimulate growth, and which is probably quite a bit less hard than most people think it is, and then just make sure you eat meat and rice until you're full every 3 hours, and do that for 10 years, and you'll be 95% of what the bodybuilder you could be with the most detailed training program, most detailed diet, most detailed everything. Now that 5% was the difference between being a gym bodybuilder and being and winning competition. So that 5% isn't trivial.
Yeah.
But I mean, most guys, just paralyze themselves with overanalysis when really it's find some meat, find some potatoes, find some meat, find some rice, and shove it in your mouth every 3 hours for the next 10 years, and then and keep trying to shove more of it in, and then eventually when you're shoving when you're at work and someone says, "Oh, what do you eat? 6 small meals a day?" and they look at one of your meals and they go, "Whoa, that's a huge meal." And you say, "Yeah, I eat 6 huge meals a day." When you get to that point, then you're ready for any prep. You're in a perfect position for bodybuilding.
Yeah, and it's what I worked with other coaches after you to be able to get leaner, just for different methodologies, and they were very, very good coaches. I'm not gonna say anything bad. I mean, with Shelby and John, so you're talking
Top of the top.
Top of the top. Just different philosophies. John was a sneaky fuck because he was the last one, because he already seen what I did with you and what I did with Shelby, and the good and the bad. The bad being, oh, that's great, you got lean, you were supposed to go back up to about 250, and here you are at 300. All right, and I remember him saying, "I'll guarantee not one of these guys had the goal or intention for you to be 312." And I'm like, well, that's probably true, but that was my type of thing. So what he did was kind of got me to the place to where you were, and then he started sneaking in 2 more weeks. He used these he'd say, "Man, there's you see that vein in your shoulder? 2 more weeks, man, that thing's it's going to pop." And you're in this different mindset.
Oh yeah, you get in that zone.
You're like, fuck yeah, I'll do this 2 more weeks. Then I remember the last one was, he kept doing this 2-week shit for about 6 weeks. Then he's like, "Look at your abs." And obviously he's got the filter on the camera and he's taking the pictures. Like, there's a vein in there. 2 more weeks, you're going to fucking have veins in your ab. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do this. And then I remember at that point in time, my calories were probably 2,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it was I weighed 220. And I got on the scale that Saturday and it was like 218. And I'm like, oh, motherfucker, I haven't been 218 since like junior high. And I came in the gym on Saturday and I told John, fuck you. I don't care. There is no 2 more weeks. This shit is done. And then John looked at me and he said, "Now, how much weight did you typically rebound out of every guy you've ever worked with?" I said, "John, 30 pounds. And he says, "What that puts you at?"
Right where you're
250. Well, you little motherfucker. And it worked until I had to have my hip replaced and threw everything way out of balance. But that's what I can say from that standpoint is there's a big fucking difference between 2,000 calories and 3,600 calories when you're dieting. Just based on what it looks like on the plate. I mean, either way, you're going after the last grain of rice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If it falls on the floor, you're going after it.
That's where you're scraping the protein out of the corn.
But when it's 2,000, it's bad.
Well, that's what people, I always hear 2,000 calories, and that's the way you can tell when people are like, "Oh, yeah, my last diet, I got down." The difference between people who say they got down to their last 2,000 calories and people who really did was the way you just dragged out that,
fuck. I mean,
6 ounces of chicken is like 300 calories.
It's still 6 meals.
Yeah. So needing nothing but a chicken breast 6 times a day is 1,800 calories.
it's like half a chicken breast and a spoonful of rice.
Yeah,
it's like, you're fucking kidding me. And a lot of water.
Yeah.
A lot of Diet Coke.
Yeah.
And shit like that. Okay, so he brings you back in, and so is that all you're doing now? Is the prep coaching?
No, I'm an engineer. I'm lead test and controls engineer at Eaton Corporation. I'm in charge of end-of-line testers for our NAFTA. Basically a new 18-speed heavy-duty truck transmission. When they go through the assembly line, we have to simulate a truck to test the transmission to make sure it's it passes all the acceptable criteria. I'm in charge of that tester for this new transmission, and then all the kind of the NAFTA ones that have already been built. Then I do the Troponin Nutrition, coaching people. I also sell ebooks now, which like kick myself for not doing it earlier, because I wrote Comprehensive Performance Nutrition in like 2008. And I kind of had a second one written for almost a decade. And I just kept saying, I'm going to make this into an ebook. I'll sell it at some point, make it into an ebook. And I just never did. And finally, I just finally put it together because I'm always writing. I already got like six other different things in various levels of completion. And so I had over 1,000 pages of stuff written. And I finally put that thing, actually, I don't even think I finished that one first. I think I put out, I don't remember which one I put out first. I can't remember. Put something on an ebook thinking, I'll put it on my website, market it, and see if anyone buys it. And it sold better than a million times better than I ever predicted. And I was like, so then, like an idiot, as a poor businessman, which I am, rather than stage the release of all of them, I dumped them all out immediately, and saturated my own market pretty quick. But I've really enjoyed the ebooks, and I just released the Comprehensive Performance Nutrition Volume 2. You can buy it at Troponin Nutrition. It's on Amazon. It's a Kindle book also. But shouldn't say that's all I do. We have the real estate stuff also, but engineering is my main job, and then the coaching, the ebooks, and the real estate.
So the coaching would explain, because I was told that you have a waiting list of people now
that
are waiting to work with you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always pretty close. It's hard to say, like, when people say, one spot open, or I never have a hard, because some clients are, like, this is actually an easy time of the year, because USA's is over, Masters Nationals is over. Nationals is coming up, but that's the last big national show, and that's not until November. So those guys are like 11 weeks out right now, 12 weeks out. And so, and all the spring shows are over. So I don't have, contest season for bodybuilding isn't until September, October, November again. So I got an entire month. So like a time like this, I can handle more clients. But Janae Krozaleski just posted that she's going to compete in the next year. And so that flooded my, market. So I'm pretty much at my limit. I hate to hesitate, say a waiting list, because because if the right client comes along, you'll always take them. There's certain clients that you've wanted to work with, but yeah, I'm always pretty booked. I mean, yeah, like I said, I was really, really appreciative. I couldn't believe that people remember me after years away, but so I've been really appreciative. And the second time around, I'm trying to really appreciate the full client list rather than treat it as a full client list. I'm so busy. But yeah,
well, you don't. I mean, it's one of the things that I've kind of put out there is some of the best coaches are the ones that aren't working in the industry.
Yeah.
Because you can restrict who you want to work with, and
that's
you don't
that's
have to.
Well, that's the other thing. People are like, why do you keep the day job? And I think partly what part of me leaving the first time was just being a total burnout of doing nothing but coaching. And when you do nothing but coaching, you feed your family, and my wife was still in grad school, so you feed your family on coaching, so you don't get, I guess you could refuse clients, but you're refusing your kid, a new pair of shoes or something. And so it was a lot of working with people I might not necessarily wanted to work with, a lot of putting up with stuff I didn't necessarily want to put up with, where when I keep my regular job, I have I get to pick. So every client I work with right now is someone I enjoy working with. And it doesn't mean, it's not necessarily that they're competitors. Some of my best clients right now, I have a guy right now, I don't know if I should say his name, named Adam. Want to say he was, and he's natural, want to say he was to go back to metabolism thing, 140 pounds maybe, skinny fat, I don't know how tall he is, but not short, 140 pounds, natural, guy who couldn't add size. And had terrible metabolism. I mean, terrible. I want to say we were around 19 or 2,100 calories. He's now eating, I'm guessing, over 7,000 calories. He's about 185, maybe 188, I'm sorry, 180, somewhere around 188. This has been a little over a year, but he's added 45 pounds of almost 47 pounds of size, completely clean, little body fat gain, and he went from looking like, what you can imagine your 6 foot, 140 pound guy looks like, to a 6 foot, 187 pound guy. I mean, he can wear, he wears the right shirt, it's tight on his arms and his bicep vein sticks out.
Yeah.
And so like a guy like that who's no interest in competing, doesn't take anything, and that's been one of my fun, and I want to write a book on that and the process of building his metabolism, because that's been an absolute riot. And that's something like I get to pick and choose a guy like that, because I don't, and it's a lot of work. That's because you pick that, like people love to have high profile clients, and you work with a pro or top national guy. those guys aren't work.
No,
they're genetic freaks. You tell them to do anything, it's going to work. Basically, all you do is, they say, hey, I really wanted pizza. I know I'm 6 weeks out. You think, no, you shouldn't have pizza. That's basically all you do with those guys. You take a guy like this who doesn't use any supplements, got a day job, got a family, he's 140 pounds, never been able to gain weight his whole life, got terrible metabolism. That's a lot of work because you got to teach him what protein is. You got to teach him how to mix meals together. You got, and so that's, you have the luxury of picking guys like that, which I guess I'm really happy in the position I'm at because I'm not chasing the high profile clients. I always have, guys that are turning pro, but I'm not banking my whole income on that.
Yeah. With going back to Croc, because I saw the post on that. She has got to be how old?
46.
So 46, okay, and beat the fuck. All right, so at least I know muscle tendon wise, beat the fuck. I don't know joint because I haven't spoke to, Janae nor Matt with
I think she's got pretty.
I think the joints are okay.
Surprisingly,
but I'm not sure. But the post was to turn pro, and there's the estrogen, all the, what's it been, 2, 3 years? How many years since she really, we've known for forever, but how many years since everybody's?
Probably 2015?
Has it been that long?
I think so.
So 4 years, it's like, to the people listening, it's confusing to us because I've known for 15 years, 20 years, forever. So it's a little different in our minds, but the estrogen and the hormones and all the shit that was using for that part was kind of off and on. Actually, as soon as she stopped competing, so it was off and on probably a year or two before.
Before it was, I think I don't want to speak for her, but I think because I think in around 2015 she was going to try to make a comeback, and was outed.
Yeah.
And I think before that had already started estrogen and then stopped maybe. But it's been a while.
I guess the question that I want to get to is how fucked up is her hormone profile? Has that been tested? Well,
define fucked up because I don't think any of ours is.
Well, you know what I mean.
I don't believe she has any breast tissue growth. Well, you can see the picture she posted. She looks.
No, she looks good. I'm talking if you're looking at the blood work because we're talking.
The thing is, as far as
two different spectrums.
And I don't want to speak as an expert on this. I'm not a physician. But as far as the blood work, being on estrogen is going to basically improve everything that the androgens have worsened.
Yes.
So HDL is going to be better. Red blood cell count is going to be within a normal range. Kidney function is going to be better. BUN might be elevated because that's kind of a sign of anabolism. When you're anabolic, your BUN's lowered, but that's not a direct thing because your BUN is going to be elevated because of the high nitrogen in the diet from a high protein diet. But in general, their BUN will be better. Creatinine is going to be much, much better. So kidney function will be better. Liver function will be better. So if anything, it could almost be like a reset where it's like starting.
That's what I was wondering.
Yes, almost. I don't want to. You might almost be able to push the envelope.
To me, it would be, and I'm obviously no expert on hormone profiles, but I've had now that we can get blood work done, over the internet for
awesome,
$150. I get my blood work looked at. I see Serrano 3 or 4 times a year, so quarterly. It's being analyzed quarterly, and little simple changes make big differences.
Oh yeah.
And the funny thing about that, I actually did laugh to myself, is going back years and years and years ago. There used to be some people I may have known that would take a compound called Heferoid.
Oh yeah.
Which were cattle implants, and it was propionate with estrogen.
Estrogen, I remember that.
And
and there was an argument that people wondered whether it would improve growth because of the estrogen, and I'll let you finish.
Oh yeah. There was there are two ways to basically use it. You could filter it, and if you filtered it
From animal
it
kits.
would take the estrogen out and just leave the propionate. Or fuck it, you just crush it, cook it, and shoot it. And the people who made the best progress were the ones that just said fuck it, cook it, and shoot it.
Yeah, and that was really confusing because it used to be everyone just thought for a while it was get estrogen as low as you can, and then that just threw in the face of everything because not only were they not keeping estrogen low, but they were taking estrogen.
Yeah,
I
may or may not have seen somebody actually squeeze their male squeeze their nipple.
I may or may not have also seen that.
But that's what I was wondering is the joint issues. You know, because the work ethic is never a problem. It's actually, it may be, because it may be too high. Because I want to go back to something that you said earlier and really going deep on this.
Good.
Training doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. So I mean, it does matter. Yeah. I get that, but it's the least important of all variables for bodybuilding. So let's go into that and let's speak. Let's just use Croc as an example because that's a high intensity, basically bust ass, not high volume, moderate volume, because she, you know, it depends on who you're talking to at the time.
Yeah, I think she's 100%. No, she's changed her name to Janae.
So it's Janae.
I think, but she's fortunately because I'm an idiot and I knew her as Matt for longer than I've known her as Janae. She's forgiving if you say.
I'm sure of that. And so with that standpoint, it was balls to the wall training. And when I say not high volume, I'm comparing that to something like a Meadows, where you got 50 sets per body part. You know, Janae was never anywhere around that, but at 30, you know. So,
with warm-ups. I mean, you don't get to 4 digits on squats without a lot of warm-ups.
So now you got 46 years old, right? And actually coming off of a break, really. That could actually be a good thing there. How's the training not matter?
I'll say, as a general rule, training's for performance, and you can say that because you can find some of the greatest powerlifters of all time who don't look that impressive physically. I mean, they're huge people, but they won't walk on the beach and and look like a physical specimen. So training is performance, and same thing for any sport. Look at Daniel Cormier, in MMA. And nutrition is for physique, and I'll lay it out logically really quick, and I think see if I can get everyone to agree with this. I think anyone who's training with a moderately high workload is producing more growth than the diet can cover. So they're creating more stimulus for muscle growth than any diet or any supplementation can cover. And you can disagree with this, but I'll lay it out as this. If that wasn't the case, then take any given person who's doing whatever their workout is and increase the workload. You should see a linear increase in muscle growth. And you don't see that. You can't take someone who's working out, whatever their normal workout is, have them add 5 sets and grow that proportion better. So if they were doing 20 sets and you've added 5 sets, they're not going to grow whatever that is, 2.5% better. Or add 10 sets. You can't see that linear relation. You will find at some point where a very, very low workload stops them growing. So there's some low level. So you have, their workload is here. You don't increase it and see an increase in muscle growth. You see their workout here, they drop their workload to here, there's no muscle loss. Then all of a sudden they're really low, they start not progressing anymore. So that means that threshold for growth is far lower than most people are probably training. And I don't like to agree with that because I want the hard, because I feel like I'm willing to train hard and I want that to benefit me, but I don't believe that's the case. And you can find anecdotal evidence, look at many top bodybuilders who train like pussies, who are massive, huge, and round. Paul Dillette's a perfect example. I'm not saying he didn't train hard, but he was known for not training hard. But ask anyone, and this used to get posted on all the time on the old forums, what people say, why was Paul Dillette so big? I heard he didn't train hard. And people who knew him would say, well, no, he didn't train hard. I don't know why, I just never see the need to. But one thing I can say is he never missed a meal. No matter what, he didn't even think otherwise. He might have been not a hardcore bodybuilder as far as obsessed with it. Everything came easy to him. But if it was time to eat, he walked over the firehouse or whatever, and he got his double beef patties and rice. And he ate like a bodybuilder. And so I think if you look at all the evidence, you can find that there's all kinds of different workouts. And there's very minimal look at the way Meadows trains versus the way like a Jordan Peters trains versus the way anyone different trains, any high profile coach, training coach, and you won't find a drastic difference in their progress of their clients. There's benefits to each one. Like someone like Meadows, I would say is much more beneficial for longevity, and I think, so if you can train that way and get the same growth as someone like a Jordan Peters who's going, to absolute failure, heavy weights, that you could argue that that's better because you can extend the lifespan of your growth. But you take any of those, take Meadows' program and have a guy do 5 extra sets. You're not going to guarantee a linear increase in growth. You can take Meadows' program, drop the sets in half, and they probably aren't going to see a decrease in growth or any change in growth. Drop it in a tenth, and at some point you're going to see them stop growing, which tells me that the level where you create stimulus, where a stimulus that it becomes greater than the nutrition can cover, is far lower than most people train at. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I say training doesn't matter, because as long as you go to the gym, and I hate to say this because I love training, and I really, really want, if I were to compete again, I really, really want to be able to say, well, I can dictate whether or not I win by making sure I train harder than everyone else. And from a body fat standpoint, that comes into play, calories burned. But other than that, if you are training moderately intense, which most people are, you're creating more stimulus than any nutrition supplementation can cover. And so you're limited by how good your nutrition is and how good your supplementation is. But wherever those are at is somewhere far below your probable workload in the gym.
So we're speaking solely from a hypertrophy standpoint, because we're not speaking from a strength standpoint.
That's why I say, So, okay. So training's for performance. We're not talking for muscle growth.
I got you. Okay. That I agree with. Mm-hmm. Where I would not know the correct answer to is when you start talking about training economy, mm-hmm. because it's, to me, even with strength sports and powerlifting or whatever it is, mm-hmm. you want to do the least you possibly can do to get the greatest mm-hmm. result. Mm-hmm. Anything more than that is just a stimulus that you have to recover from that takes more recovery away mm-hmm. to be able, it hurts you more than it actually helps. Mm-hmm. So when and I obviously have a more biased view because I have 2 prosthetics and joints that are fucked to hell. So when I look at something that is very, very high volume, very high repetition, so say like the Meadows mm-hmm. compared to Dante, mm-hmm. right? So vast difference. Let's say, probably 80% difference in total number of repetitions, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So wear and tear of a joint is based upon repetition. Yep. Okay, load is a factor, right, mm-hmm. of that joint, but is it more of a factor? You know what I'm saying? Is mm-hmm. one heavy rep done in a warmed up state mm-hmm. more of a factor to the joint than 150 repetitions to a joint that's degenerated mm-hmm. with bone spurs? And I think that's kind of a multivariate problem, because I think if you look at like a pitching, like certain things like the elbow joint or certain movements, or tennis elbow, there's going to be like the repetition is going to play a bigger role. But I think that's mostly because like an internal rotation of a throwing motion, you just can't really use heavy weight. So I mean, I think I don't. See, the problem is that's why I don't really like to get into training that much, because it's so many variables involved that it's, because my personal belief is that progressive overload with heavy weights is the best way. Yeah. But I can also say that there are people who train entirely different, who grow very well and in many cases faster than someone trains that way. So yeah, I mean, I think there's just so many. I don't really know which one's harsher. I would think the heavyweights would be worse, because I know so many powerlifters who are beat up, but I also know so many powerlifters who train way beyond points where most people would say, okay, something's not right, I should back off here. Well, the other factor there too is when you're speaking, the powerlifters, you're speaking of very large number of repetitions on the same movement plane.
Oh yeah.
Where bodybuilders,
not only that, where the entire goal is to perfect that movement and get it as precise and repetitive as possible.
Where a bodybuilder is training multiple every plane, mm-hmm. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to hit every body part. So you got, the the power lifter that's squat, you know, so, and then you got the bodybuilder that's leg extension, leg curl, leg press, you know.
So the power lifter might be doing less repetitions, but all the repetitions are in the exact same
plane.
Yeah.
Or say it's a bench press, it's a board press, it's a floor press.
Exact same wear path.
You know, kind of the same. Even the slightest change can make a difference in the joint mechanics, but, you know, it's one of those things that I've had conversations with multiple people about. There's never really a definitive answer. Yeah. There's only what you know for yourself.
And it's tough to do any studies on it, because how do you make the control group? You know,
yeah, we're gonna bust the fuck out of you until you need a replacement. Yeah. You know, it's just crazy. It's crazy. But going back to what you were saying, I used to do seminars, I guess is what you would call it, but it's not really. It was Melsif and he would speak one day, I would speak one day. His was on the Olympic lifts and I was on the power lifts. And he had little camps in his house, and we were, that part was, you know, just instructional. It was fun, teaching, coaching, just normal stuff. But after everybody was asleep, it was just me and him talking. That was, you know, the restoration stuff, the recovery, all that stuff was just great conversations. And I asked him about muscle hypertrophy. I said, you know, what if, you know, because we talked a lot about conjugate training, obviously, but I spent a lot of time talking to him about more block-oriented training and muscle hypertrophy. And I remember him saying, bodybuilding is not that complicated of a sport. All you have to do is to train the muscle, create enough damage in the muscle that it needs to have recovery, and then feed it the nutrients it needs to recover and repeat. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
It is. And
just do it.
Well, and that's why. Fuck, you know? So, well, it's funny is, and I am a bodybuilder, so I'm not, you know, knocking down bodybuilders when I say this, but bodybuilders have a reputation for being dumb, and it's probably because, in my experience, the people who aren't dumb ruin their bodybuilding by overanalysis. So, you know, like what would make the perfect bodybuilder? Someone who's got great genetics, someone who doesn't overanalyze. And I don't want to say this in any negative way, because I love Ronnie Coleman and he's like my idol in the sport. But, you know, he got a training program from whoever, you know, 25 years before he retired, and he did that same workout for 25 years. You know, he went in, his row back day was deadlifts, bent over rows, T-bar rows. His pull down day was, you know, and then he had his chest day with his barbells and his chest days with dumbbells. And, you know, he had his squat, leg press, leg curl day, and then he had his hack squat, front squat, stiff leg deadlift, you know. And so, you know, you take a guy and just, so rather than overthink it, these are the work movements that stimulate the muscle the most. I'm just going to do them for 25 years straight. And then he met Chad Nichols, and Chad Nichols said, eat all this protein, good old chicken, you know, and then a bunch of potatoes. And he said, okay, I'll eat a bunch of chicken and potatoes. And he did that for 15 years. Yeah. Without batting an eye, without thinking, and just simple, you know, and that's really true. And that's why, I didn't emphasize this enough. You cleared me when you said for hypertrophy. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. That's why training for hypertrophy is simple and basic. Mm-hmm. That's why I view training as performance. Training is for performance, because when it comes as far as hypertrophy, as long as you go in and do anything with a moderate workload, after that it's all diet. No,
I mean, if you want to be a bodybuilder and all you're going to do is go in and train, and you're not going to take care of your nutritional needs, you're fucked.
Yeah.
You know,
that's another thing. That's another kind of argument for why training for bodybuilding. Because go to any gym. Everyone's doing the same. Every bodybuilder's doing the same workout. The bro split, you know, chest one day, back day, legs, then arms and shoulders, 2 days off a week, you know, 5 days a week train. Everyone does the same workout. Everyone does the same exercises. There's only so many, there's only 100 exercises, period, you know. Everyone does the same exercise for chest. So why do some guys look like bodybuilders and some don't? It's not because people aren't trained hard, because everyone's trained to failure. Everyone's doing bench presses beyond failure, you know, so their buddy's lifting the bar off their chest because they want to get stronger and bench. The difference is the nutrition. Some of them are going home and eating meat and rice every 3 hours. Some of them aren't.
With throughout your training history, what style of training was the most productive for your growth?
Heavy training. And I say the reason, and this is why it's more in depth than just the most for muscle growth, the best training, I believe, is whatever gets you most excited to train, because that's when you're going to make sure you at least stimulate that minimum workload every single time. And for me, it was like a DC type training, not, you know, modified to some extent, but it was basically go in and on my core movement, try to get stronger, And then the way I would modify it would do, so there's an argument, there's different types of muscle growth, and I don't mean to get sidetracked here, but there's your basic like myofibril growth, where you have the actual tissue, and the myosin and actin, they cross, and so basically myosin and actin's like this, and so myosin goes on, grabs onto the actin onto the myosin, and contracts it like that, and that's a contraction. And so you damage that tissue under the training, and the proteins come and repair it bigger and stronger. And so that's where muscle growth comes from. The only problem is, what is that actual contractile tissue? Well, you take a pound of steak. Look at what that pound of steak looks like. Now dehydrate it down to beef jerky. It's a fraction of the steak. That beef jerky is the myofibril portion. That's the actual contractile tissue. That's 30% or less of the steak. So most of your muscle is not muscle. Most of your muscle is things other than muscle. Blood. The blood from the blood vessels, the capillary density, the arteries, the glycogen storage, the fluid, the water that comes, every gram of glycogen holds 3.5 grams of water, so the water that comes with the glycogen, the sodium that comes with the glycogen, all that stuff. So the majority of your muscle is things other than muscle tissue, and the argument is that there's also sarcoplasmic growth, and that's where like the blood volume, the higher rep stuff, and that's arguably why bodybuilders have a different look to their muscles, a rounder look than powerlifters do. And that's why you've ever heard people say, oh, he's got a powerful look. It's a different type of look. And I think that's because heavyweight strength training, where pumps aren't the primary focus, triggers almost all of that myofibril growth. And it creates kind of almost a denser look to the muscle because it's not puffed out as much. And so my type of training was, if I couldn't go to the gym, if I didn't have a goal to try and get stronger, if I didn't have a weight I wanted to hit, or everyone like my goal set for the day, I couldn't get excited to train. It was just going in to pump weight. And I'm not a guy who goes in to look good in the mirror. I'm usually all covered up. I'm a guy who goes in because I want to set a new PR on a movement. So that was my main goal. But then after that, I figured there's other avenues of growth, and that other avenue of growth is increasing that sarcoplasmic tissue, the non-contractile tissue, which I would figure would come from getting blood into the tissue. So after that, I would do whatever to get a good pump. That was my basic go in. Like my back or my chest day, I guess, would be setting my PR on bench or incline, or maybe on bench and incline. Then after that, it'd just be however many sets it took to get a really good pump.
Well, part of, and it's weird to talk about DC training because, Dante says everybody explains it incorrectly. So it's just, and if you read his stuff, you can kind of see why he says that, because a lot of people do. Were you utilizing on the main heavy movement, the rest pause?
Yeah. Not always. When we filmed Project Superheavyweight, we were doing pretty strict DC. And at that time, which was 4 days a week, which is another thing I struggle with, because I've always made my best gains training only 4 days a week, which was hard because I don't want to be out of the gym 3 of the days of the week. But it was much of the time we would do that, and then not the things from the DC training that I pretty much always incorporated when I was really training was progressive overload, which probably at least 25% of the time would come in the form of a rest pause set. On the heavy things like squats, you're not going to do rest pause. And then the other thing would be the Widowmakers, a set for like around 20 reps, and which for me those best movements were squat, because I always wanted to get 500 for 20. And I don't necessarily think they were the best for my leg growth, but I got so excited about those days trying to set a new 20 rep record. And then for back, the seated low rope rows, which I always try to explain and have a hard time explaining it. It took my back from like my worst body part to my best body part, I think, because it was the only thing that completely isolated my lats. And so those, and I mean, I probably use them for all the movements, some type of Widowmaker, but basically the idea of a highly focused either rest pause or some type of PR movement to as the main portion of the movement, and then some type of Widowmaker set. Those are the two things I pretty much always did from DC. Did you incorporate the loaded stretching when the camera was around? I mean, and not because they're just, I don't people realize how incredibly painful that is, and I regret not doing it more, because I think that I think studies more now are showing the benefits of that even more than it. I don't think I believed in it as much as I wish I would have at the time when I did those, and especially when a camera was around. But when we weren't filming or something, holding a 90-second stretch with like dumbbells on a fly is, I mean, it gets so painful where you're like, screw it, I don't even care if I'm big. This is not worth it. I'm done. And so if I did it, it would be shortchanged. The other thing that looking back really frustrates me is because the one area where I really, really emphasized stretching was my back also, my lats. Same thing, the period I was doing DC and the period I was doing direct DC was when my back made the biggest improvements by far. And so looking back, I really wish I would have stretched more on my chest and body parts that didn't grow easily.
One thing that I found just over the past 10 years of being fucked up is because I've had to find ways to train a body that shouldn't be training, for many, many reasons, is modified loaded stretching at the end of the session. But for me, it won't be dumbbell flies. I'll use a pec deck. Or not, I'll use the pec deck. And this is where I think it's important for people to study exercise science and study basic strength training, because some of the things that I'm going to say here are going to make total sense. You're going to be like, oh my God, I never thought of that. Is, let's say I do a couple pump sets to get blood in there and my shoulder's a wreck, right? I don't want to increase the range of motion of my shoulder at all. It needs replaced. I'm cool with where it is. If there's a risk benefit ratio, an extra 5% isn't worth being the tipping point of never being able to train again. But I can go, just with the one and do very, very slow negatives at 40%. All right, just for the muscle control, because what happens when you get back in there to a bad joint, it's stopping for a few reasons. The joint's all knotted up. There's bone spurs. There's also a lot of muscle inhibition. There's a lot of muscle saying, fuck you, I'm not doing this. All right, so if I go 40%, just right to threshold, not into threshold, very slow, I get those muscles to say, okay, you're not going to kill me. This is okay. This is okay. And then if I do do the 4 reps or whatever, so I do a set of 4 reps of the negatives just to kind of get the muscle to say, okay, cool, this is good. And it also helps me establish where is threshold. Well, that's easy. You go to where it hurts. Oh shit, come right out of where, there you go. You go where it doesn't hurt. Now, I'll do my loaded stretch right out of where it doesn't hurt. So say 5 degrees out of where pain is. Isometrics work within 10 to 15 degrees. So if I'm doing a loaded stretch, I'm still getting 10 degrees into the area I don't have the range of motion in, right? That doesn't mean if I wanted to, I could try to force that new range of motion over a period of time and then strengthen that range of motion and then bring it back into the training. There's a process, rehab process. But I think with the loaded stretching, where as we get older, like a dumbbell fly to me would be an unwise choice because popping, grinding, crepitus, all kinds of stuff. When you can plant yourself and support it, so the only thing that's stretching is the pec on a pec deck, then you can control exactly. It's like, all right, too much shoulder, too much pec, especially if you're experienced, you know exactly where I need this one, I need where to go. But that's helped maintain range of motion and joints that should continue to keep losing range of motion. And not just on that, but on things like, leg curls where somebody can help with that, and the leg extensions. My knees are cool. The hips are replaced, so they're cool for that. But things like that. And fortunately for me, my spine is good. But I do think that if I could go back, I would have added in light modified loaded at the end of the training. I like that. Out of threshold, not in threshold, but I know what I would have done. I would have went to where that fucker hurt, you know what I'm saying? And like, somebody come push on this, and force it. So it's almost a good thing that I didn't. But when I was working with you, I was training basically modified DC, and a lot of the exercises that you were talking about, like the rope row. Oh my God. That for building your back.
Really taught me to open my scapula too.
And it teaches you. I can't believe the number of people that, and I'm talking IFBB pro bodybuilders, named pro bodybuilders that would come out to train with Meadows, that I would watch train their back in total disbelief. Because the cool thing about watching them train is most of them don't get super fat. You know, they're lean, so you can see what's contracting and what's not. John was always paper thin, so I could see what fibers were contracting. And just simple things like a chest supported row, it's like, dude, man, this is all trap for you. Yeah. What are you trying to work? Rear delts and traps or your lats?
That's why I think back. That's why I think back is one of the most genetic body parts. People talk about calves or forearms. For me, because same thing, because I wanted a big back, and I always looked at back as like a sign of being like a hard trainer. And my back sucked, and I trained hard, and I really worked. And then I'd see these guys doing like with freaky backs, and it's like you said, they're doing rowing. All I'm seeing is they're shrugging. It's all trap, and it would always just blow my mind how it would work.
But we would be able to, you know, depress the scapula, teach them how to pull, and then all of a sudden they're weak as hell at it. And sore as hell the next day. Exactly. And the smart ones kept doing it, and then their back. I mean, John's back blew up.
Yeah. Well, John's lats, his last couple shows, especially the way it looked like he changed his lat spread to where he spread the scapula more. Yes. I even messaged him and asked him how he did it, because he stretched it. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. It was Flex Lewis showed him a stretch to be able to pull the scapula apart. And then a lot of it was, you know, really, really focusing, because like I said, he was so, I mean, the work ethic wasn't a problem, but he was always so lean that it's like, okay, tell me what you want to target, because I'm right here. You don't have to send me a video of anything. Tell me what you want to target, and I'll tell you if it's flexing or not. I can see it. You know,
it's funny, when I was in school, in undergrad, in our human dissection class, the professor said he always secretly hoped a bodybuilder would die right before a competition, and so they could dissect it, because then you could actually really, because when you're dissecting, most people are dissecting 80-year-old women, or their muscles are atrophied and they got 35% body fat, and it's like, for what you said, because you wouldn't even just lay them down and you can see every.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just simple things like John scoot up him just 2 inches, bam, there it is. That's what we want. Now, we could make a debate, does that even matter for muscle growth? I mean, that's a whole separate
debate. I mean, I think it has to, but I agree
think it has to.
I agree it's a debate, but I at least hope
I saw it.
Yeah.
So let me put it that way. I saw it, you know, with John, and I saw it with some of these other guys, and I saw some of the other guys that didn't change. But then they go back and they end up tearing traps and, you know, rotator cuffs. And it's like, well, no shit. You know, what do you think's going to happen? We haven't got to any questions, so what do you got?
All right, first one's
hold on real quick. We're live, so do you need to take a piss live or anything?
Yeah, we are.
I'm good.
You're good? I'm good. Okay.
I'm wearing diapers.
Okay.
Depends.
First question here. First question here from Joe Shalero. What are some common mistakes you guys find with people make when carb cycling?
For me, it's people think that it's only carb cycling. It's for me, it's well, actually, the biggest mistake is I see people keeping carbs too low. They think carb cycling means it's like you're doing a no carb diet. So it'll be like, on days I don't train, I eat 0 carbs. On days I do train, I eat 100. But then once a week I carb up with 300 grams of carbs. It's like, no, that's not carbing up. You're just a low carb diet. I call it carb cycling, but really for me, it's calorie cycling. So typically my off days and most of my training days, the protein will be the same amount and the carbs will vary. But my high carb days, the carbs are very, very, very high and the protein actually drops a lot. But I think the biggest thing is people not eating enough carbs. They think it's carb cycling as a form of a no carb diet, meaning just one day a week they add a little bit of carbs in. My high carb, that Adam guy I was talking about was eating 250 grams of carbs per meal, 1,550 grams of carbs per day on his one high carb day a week. But that one day a week, and so the whole point of carb cycling for me when dieting is that you go into a high carb day in a glycogen deficit. So someone like my size might store 1,000 grams of carbohydrates as glycogen. So if I go into that day 500 grams depleted, and say my basal metabolic rate allows me to eat 500 grams of carbohydrates, that means I can eat 1,000 grams of carbs while dieting, while in contest prep, and not store a gram of them as fat, because I replaced the 500 grams that I'm depleted. I could probably store more through super compensation, and I burned the 500 with my natural metabolism. So there's no better way to keep your metabolism high, to boost your metabolism while you're dieting, and do it without storing fat, because I'm eating. So the way thermodynamics works is if you eat more calories than you burn, you're going to store those. If I burn 2,000 calories and I eat 2,500 calories, those 500 calories get stored in my body. They can get stored as fat, obviously. They can get stored as muscle, unlikely, and then get stored as glycogen, as carbohydrates. So if I can create a situation where I'm depleted in glycogen and I increase my glycogen intake in the diet, then I can eat more calories than I burn, and rather than store them as fat, I'm storing them in the muscles glycogen, which then I can use to fuel training. I restore my thyroid function, so I don't get any decrease in metabolism, and I can fix my hunger hormones to some extent, so I'm not as hungry on the other days.
I'm going to ring in, just not because I know anything about prepping people, but I do have a minor in nutrition, so I guess I should throw that out there just to brag. It was 30 years ago, so it probably carries no weight. But I'm partially responsible for this. We made a video on a 10,000 calorie a day high carb day that, when I was working with Justin, was one of the things that I was doing towards the end of the training. And what I think has been misunderstood from that is that people didn't understand there was 18 to 20 weeks of dieting before that. I was probably under 5% caliper body fat.
Yeah. You were at the point where we were starting to eat muscle tissue, getting so depleted.
I mean, it was a super high carb day, and it was. I mean, I go through 3-4 boxes of cereal in a day. So keep in mind, I wasn't doing a show, so he's not going to sit there and say, look, it has to all be rice. If I can say, look, Rice Krispies has, the same exact amount of carbohydrates.
Half the words are right.
And no fat. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It fit the bill. But I think what happened was people saw that, and then it's like, oh, I want a carb cycle. I'm going to do a low carb day. I'm going to do a medium carb day. Then I'm going to eat 10,000 calories of cereal. And didn't understand that the day before that super high carb day, I looked like a 100-meter sprinter. Yeah. I mean, it just completely, my weight would change 8 to 10 pounds from the 2 low carb days is usually what hit before.
And that's a good way you could do the math with it, because you can take a gram of glycogen and a total, like a 1 gram of carbohydrate becomes about almost 5 grams when stored in the muscle. So you can convert grams to pounds and see how depleted you were and how much actually got stored as glycogen. And so you can do it mathematically to see whether or not it worked. Because the thing is that if you don't store them as I don't want to say this because this isn't always the case, but I'll say it. You'll actually gain less weight when you're storing them as fat, because the fat isn't bringing the water with the carbohydrate getting converted to fat and then stored directly as fat, not with the water. So you almost want to gain a lot of weight on the high carb day. That isn't always the case, because sometimes there's a point where you're so dialed in and you're not storing any extra water outside of the glycogen that you don't gain as much weight. But as a general rule, you actually want to gain a lot of weight on the high carb day. That's how you know you're storing the carbs as glycogen and not as fat.
Yeah, and if you ever get to that point to where you're that depleted, which is going to be very rare, and if you are, you're probably going to be working with somebody. If they do let you choose cereal, do not choose Fruity Pebbles. Because it will make the roof of your mouth
Captain
bleed.
Crunch will put you in the ER.
Yeah, I mean, they will tear your mouth apart.
All right, next question here for Justin. What 3 supplements do you recommend for someone dieting down that actually work?
Ephedrine, caffeine, yohimbine. I mean, that's the classic stack. I mean, that's as good as the pharmaceutical stuff, really. I can't remember the exact. I mean, caffeine has shown study after study after study to boost metabolism, boost work output, and increase fatty acid oxidation.
Wasn't it aspirin?
It used to. Well, it's hard to even find the real. Because people used to say the aspirin within the blood, which would be good because you're taking a bunch of stuff that reflects your blood pressure. Yeah. But the original stuff, there's actually a synergistic effect, and I don't, because it's the acetylsalicylic acid. That's what aspirin is. Yes. And it somehow works with ephedrine to increase potency. And I don't remember the pathway, but I found no no real noticeable benefit. That doesn't mean that it might be a 0.5% increase, but if you're getting a 15% metabolic increase from a fed and caffeine, the another 0.5% really isn't going to make a difference. That might be a 0.5 pound of body fat over a 12-week protocol. So I do fed and caffeine with yohimbine. And the reason I don't do aspirin is because I tend to work with a lot of larger male bodybuilders who most of them, by the amount of food volume they're eating, have GI issues, acid reflux and stuff, and the aspirin just exacerbates it. So I pulled it out.
Yeah, it used to be that used to be something that we would take before we trained. Heavy training.
That's where I learned of it.
The midi thins.
Oh yeah, go to the truck stop.
Get some, and now you can't. You can't
get some trucker meth. Yeah.
The black beauties were the powdered ones you could break open and snort them.
Oh, yeah.
So you'd snort the aspirin, snort the ephedrine.
They were the mini thins were the straight up. Then there was the mini
thins.
The mini teas were 25-50. They had 50 milligrams of caffeine also.
That was some good shit. Those are good times, man. What happened to that shit like that?
I remember going, find any Road Ranger truck stop.
You buy 10 bottles.
Oh yeah, they didn't care. Some person behind the counter was always reading some lady reading like a romance novel. She just took her money. She didn't even check. You could be 12 years old.
All right. Next question here. What are the most efficient ways of maintaining contact and monitoring progress with your clients? Especially considering you have so many clients.
Well, a lot of them want to do in person. And the thing is, they don't realize that I've been doing it for 20 years over pictures. And so I'm better at pictures at this point. I see a lot of people in person, but I don't see a lot of bodybuilders in person. I look at photographs of bodybuilders in the lighting that I ask them to take the photos in all day long, every day, 7 days a week. For me, it's email. For long questions, email. I type almost 100 words a minute now. And then for short questions, text. I don't like talking on the phone, and the reason is because I have
no bars.
I have 23 texts and 32 emails right now since I left at 9:30. If those 23 texts were 23 phone calls, I wouldn't have been able to get through 23 phone calls. I'd be on number 10 right now, and by the time I got to 23, I'd have 20 more to make. So I know that people, for them, they think, well, I can talk faster, but what happens with a phone call is you do small talk, you get off on tangents. Or if you leave a text, it's, I have this question, I answer that question, and I can answer to the 23 other ones that I have.
All right. Dave, when you were at Westside Barbell, if you guys had someone like Justin Harris looking after your nutrition, do you think it would have improved your performance and recovery and maybe could have broken even more records? And how important is a nutritionist for powerlifting?
I don't like that.
We wouldn't have listened to him.
Thank you.
So it wouldn't have mattered. Here's the thing, and JM, when he was out here, stressed this, is we had very few guys in there that were dropping to a weight class, that are dieting to a weight class. So everybody in there, when I was there, I mean, the whole weight management operation through Westside when I was there was you kept gaining weight until your total stopped going up. And then when you got to that point, you would drop a weight class, maybe two. It just depended upon where it was. So everybody was kind of in a process of always being in a calorie surplus. So now nobody was, 100% eating, Hostess snack cakes for every meal every day. I mean, they were still conscious that we have to eat food, but it'd be McDonald's for breakfast and maybe Lone Star or whatever. I mean, it's decent food, but I don't think because we were in a calorie surplus, it was going to make any difference whatsoever. What I do think would have made a difference is if we would have had somebody get through our thick heads, because we were being told, and we all knew this, to stay more hydrated, because it was not an air-conditioned gym. It was a very small gym, and there was a lot of people in there. And the chalk on every bar was like cake. It was just gross. So there was no doubt in my mind, because I'd go through 3 or 4 shirts, and I would have no water. You just didn't bring water. You just trained, and it's not like it's not old school, don't drink water. It's just like, fuck it, I don't need it. We're just training. I think a lot of the small tissue injuries could have been avoided because of that. Now, the guys that were cutting down and dropping weight classes, they were getting help by people who were like JM, and then I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a former junior USA. So they were getting help by people who knew what the fuck they were doing. So, and they weren't getting weaker when they dropped their weight class. They were getting stronger. So I don't think it would have had any bearing. Supplements would have had zero bearing because nobody in there used any supplements, as far as nutritional supplements, because you're in a surplus. What the fuck you need them for? There's nothing in there. The only supplements that we take would, like we talked about, the caffeine, ephedrine, and stuff like that, and that would be on dynamic day. You never did it on max effort day because it would fuck your focus up too much. I would do it on dynamic effort day because we moved at a very fast pace, and I also would use an inhaler to be able to breathe better. Albuterol, so I could get through those sets and be able to get it done, and and that's kind of that. So I'm not going to tell you nutrition is completely unimportant.
No, I'm glad you answered that way. I was afraid you were going to feel like you had to say yes. I'm glad you didn't say it.
No.
Well, I think that goes back to what I was saying before with training is performance, nutrition is physique. And so when you're looking at guys who are trying to be super heavyweights or 308 pounds or add size, and when they're looking to add size only for performance benefits, not add size so they look prettier on stage, then the primary goal is to be in a calorie surplus, provide enough protein so that you can build muscle, and that amount is far less than most people think. And so the only time it really would become important would be when dieting down for a weight class. So you diet down properly so you don't lose tissue and are still able to make weight. Yeah. And it sounds like that's what guys were already doing.
Yeah, and one of the problems that we did have, and I was one of those people, and JM's he's the one that kind of broke me out of the mold, is, Louis always wanted, I came in at a 242 pound lifter, and I'm 5'11". It's like, you need to be 308. I'm like, fuck, no, I don't. But anyhow, it's like, okay, I got to do that, and I got stuck. Like 270, and that's what I'm saying, that for a bodybuilder this would be perfect.
Yeah.
You're 270, and I'm eating fucking everything.
Yeah. And you want the opposite, powerlifting. You want to slow your metabolism down.
Yeah, and so that's when JM, said just I was eating too clean too frequently, and that's what the conversation we would had with the guys at Westside that couldn't gain weight. It's like, what are you eating? And we're getting chicken breast, rice. I'm like, dude, man, barbecue. So you need to. You got to quit eating this shit. You need to start putting more calories per bite.
Yeah.
And you don't need to eat any more volume of food. It's just you can take the same bites per day.
Yeah.
Just get more calories. And then once they were convinced that that their abs didn't matter. Mm-hmm. Because nobody gives a fuck what your abs look like when you're squatting.
A lot of way in gear, abs they're bad for you.
Yeah,
that's less compression around your spine. I mean, because when you put a belt around squishy something, you can cram a lot of squishy around the spine. When you put a belt around abs, you don't have that benefit.
That's true.
All right, next one, Justin. Who would be your dream client? Whether it's a specific person currently competing, retired or otherwise.
Oh, man.
And then, Dave, we'll flip it on you for who would you want to coach?
I'd like to work with someone like Brandon Curry, who seems like an absolute genetic freak. But I've had a couple dream clients. I already kind of probably did. Steve Kuklo. I met Steve Kuklo when and I've told the story 100 times, but Steve came into my apartment. He met someone who knew me. I think it was Sean Merjavati, who's still a good friend, met at the Arnold Classic. Steve was about 18, somehow found out Sean was from the same area and said he wanted to try bodybuilding. Sean gave him my name. Steve comes over to my house at 220 pounds with abs as a 17 or 18-year-old kid with a handout he printed off from bodybuilding.com. He said, I want to do bodybuilding. I think you're supposed to eat a lot of chicken. And I'm looking at this kid, and he could already win the Mr. Michigan. He doesn't even know about chicken. So I already kind of had my dream client working with Steve, and that was right. I've got another guy. I like to work. I like to work with young kids because But I like because I like almost. I have 4 daughters. I don't have any sons, and I kind of almost like that experience of working with someone younger and getting to kind of relay all the. This is the stuff don't make the same mistakes I did. And so I'm working with a kid, Dominic Trevlini, right now, who I love working with. And he's a teen national champion, and he's 21 right now and about to do nationals. And I really like, because then you got a kid who doesn't have a lot of preconceived ideas, and he's interested in learning. He wants to learn a sport, and then you get to talk about a lot of things other than just coaching. How do I make money at the sport? Most of them, don't know about investing. They don't know, because kids don't get taught that, period. But they don't know, how do I make money at the sport? How do I stay healthy? What do I do if I start making money? How do I make my money make money for me? And I like working with kids like that. So I guess I've had already a couple dream clients.
I don't know if this is going to be politically incorrect or correct, but I don't know if I really give a fuck. I can't say a certain person, but what I can say is 100% it needs to be female. And I worked as a personal trainer for 15 years before, Elite FTS. And that's before that as a club manager as well. And then just the people that I've helped through the gym in here. There is more compliance with it, and they work harder. And to me, they're in my experience, in my world, when the people that I've worked with. So I'll make it that clear.
Mine also.
We're talking. I'm not going to say thousands of people, because anybody that says that is a fucking liar. So I'm talking hundreds of people. It's always been the case. Percentage wise, not obviously not 100%, so forth. And I would want to have a 6 meet commitment, which means it's going to be 2.5 years. So I need a female 6 month or 6 meet commitment, which is going to be 2 or 3 years, because I want to design something close to a quadrennial, because I want to get them to their absolute best that they can possibly be. And that can't happen if I'm only working with somebody for 12 weeks. There's a fucking whole off season that's designed to bring up weak points and all the other stuff, that if you're just peaking somebody for, even in bodybuilding, if all you're doing is prepping them for the show, when in the hell are you supposed to add the mass? They leave you after the show and then they come back. It's like, well, what have you been doing?
Could you fix what I did?
Fuck, And so that's, from that standpoint, then they have to want to learn what they're doing. They need to know the reason why, because the only way I think somebody in powerlifting, and that's the sport I know best, can get to their very best is to know how to train themselves to get to their at least how to make the changes as they're warming up. So they're warming up in the squats. And it's like, shit, the bar feels a little fucked up. I probably need to go stretch my left hamstring because it's not right. Then they do another set. Okay, this is good. Shit, my upper back's a little off. I need to go do some face pulls. Then they do another set. Cool, let's throw a plate on. Throw the plate on. Okay, this is good. Let's throw 2 plates on. Shit, this don't feel right. I need to do this again. There's all these little, and you do this now in your own training, you don't even know it.
Yeah.
There's all these little audible, I call them audible, you got to be audible ready. Yeah. There's all these micro decisions you're making throughout the course of an entire training session that you're not even aware of, that you can't do with somebody online.
Yeah.
So that's the other, they have to be here in person for me to do that. So if I can teach them that, they're willing to learn, they can teach that, and I can be able to use, when you were training with Steve and you're pushing him, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of the times if you were to lay the hammer down, just go full fucking out, you might have wanted to do that several times, but you could tell just from his nonverbals, this isn't the time to do this. He's too tired. Mm-hmm. He's mentally not there. So you don't. Now, what if you were online programming him and it's like, you got to go balls out. This is challenge that day. You just put him into a greater overtraining state, So that's, and I've had that with Ted, which he's not female, but I've had it with Ted. I've kind of had it with Lily, not completely completed at this point in time. But from that standpoint, I think I can get them to a point to where they don't need me at all, and then they could do the same thing for somebody else. But that, to me, that's the perfect scenario. The scenario that drives me nuts is the scenario of somebody just wanting to train for one meet and then disappear. Right. It's like, dude, that's I don't charge them anything, so this is like a waste of my time. It's like you're taking time away from people that really want help.
All right. Justin, what were your thoughts after hearing about what Dave had to eat for that insane cheat meal that we made that Table Talk episode about?
Oh, that was
shit! I better start including a time limit on these cheat meals. That was the last untimed cheat meal. And actually, I've made other things. I've moved the cheat meal to the last meal of the day also, so that to minimize. So my cheat meals, if I give one, it's on the, and I do give quite a bit, but they're only on the last meal of a high day. So by that point, you've already eaten a ton of carbs. You're not very hungry, and you have to get up for work the next morning. So there's only so late in the day, and so
you're full.
Yeah, and so at that point, it minimizes. They're already full, and they even, because you can give them an hour time limit, and people might not stick to it. But if I make it the last meal of the day, then even if they try to go over that hour, that means they're not getting enough sleep the next day. So I've made a couple revisions. So that's what I thought is I got to fix my protocol.
Well, keep in mind this only happened once, right? And once it was really explained to me, how many calories I brought it, because it was insane.
16,000, yeah.
I mean, it was insane. And it's like, we can't undo this. And like, you can't go ride the bike for...
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, 3,500 calories for a pound of fat. He had 16,000.
Yeah, it's like this. I'm like, oh, shit, maybe this wasn't the best idea. But...
Yeah, and I've revised the cheat meal. I guess, I've done a couple things based around that. The first thing I did was immediately put a time limit on it. And then at some point I moved it to the last meal of the day because I started realizing that the time limit's not always adhered to. And then I also kind of refined the rules of the cheat meal to anything you're craving, but it's not an eating contest. You can have anything you want if you're craving it.
Oh, yeah, because they can pound.
Yeah, don't go and eat, butter-covered Twinkies just because someone challenged you to eat the grossest thing imaginable.
Yeah.
All right. Any tips for a 280-pound powerlifter with 44% body fat at 20 years old, trying to get the body fat in the 20 percentile or 20%?
I'll answer first and let Justin take over. Forget about your lifts for right now. Get your weight down. 44% body fat at 20 years old is putting yourself in a very compromised health position for the long term. So, and forget about what he say he wanted the body fat percent to be?
20s.
Fuck the 20s. You worry about the 35. Set more reasonable goals, and your lifts are going to be what they're going to be. You're probably actually going to get stronger, but I'll let Justin go over.
I like what Dave said. He said, worry about 35. That's the most important thing. Don't worry about the end goal. Worry about what you can do to be better tomorrow. And then don't worry about your lifts, because I know you don't want and your lifts won't drop, but I'm sure people are worried. People are always worried about losing weight because they're worried about their lifts dropping. At 44% body fat at 20 years old, you're not going to have shit for lifts at 30 years old. You're not going to be 55% body fat and setting world record totals. So if your lifts tomorrow, don't worry about your lifts tomorrow. If you want your lifts to be better 5 years and 10 years down the road, you got to get to a body composition that's going to allow you to lift the type of weights you're going to want to lift. But I would say, as far as eating, don't worry about counting calories. Don't worry about following a diet. Pick it, kill it, grow it diet. And I'm actually I'm starting to maybe write a book on this. If you can't pick it, you can't hunt it, and you can't grow it, don't eat it. There's no Pop-Tart trees. There's no McDonald's plants. You don't go out hunting for Rice Krispie treats, and that's not to say there's not time to eat those things.
Trick or treat.
Yeah, yeah. I guess depending on. But so meats, foods that go to the store, and if you can't imagine yourself picking that food out of the ground, picking it from a tree, growing it in your garden, or hunting it, don't eat it. And then you can eat as much as you want if you stick to those foods, and that's going to get you down in the 20s as quick as anything will.
I forgot something here that's, I think, really important. Don't worry about your body fat percent, because as Justin was speaking, I was trying to figure out how fast my body fat percent dropped, and this is part of the reason why I won't diet now. Is I know how long it's going to take.
Yeah,
it takes me 2 weeks to drop 0.5% of body fat. That was. And it didn't matter if it was Justin, if it was John, if it was who it was or how fast we tried to drop it. You know, with Meadows, we tried to drop an extremely amount of a lot of weight because of some stupid muscle and fitness thing, and tons of cardio. It still didn't drop any fat. That was what my rate was. It's just how it worked. Now I was only willing to do so much supplementation, you know, that could have, you know, expedited that. But I think you're going to get discouraged if you're worrying about a number that's going to drop slower. The body weight's going to drop for him faster than the body fat. So the body weight's going to come down. Then after it initially, he's way up there, he's going to probably drop. I'm thinking Josh McMillan dropped. God, that was crazy. Did you work with Josh?
No.
He dropped like fucking 20 pounds in a week.
Yeah.
Once you get that first drop, you know, it's going to slow down. And you're going to get to a consistent pace, which is maybe for him 4 pounds a week, I bet. Then go on the scale, and don't weigh yourself every day. When you're trying to gain weight, you weigh yourself every day at night before you go to bed.
Well, that's the problem is that you can, especially at that size, you can fluctuate body weight 10 pounds in a day.
Yes.
You can't fluctuate 10 pounds of fat in a day. You can't fluctuate 10 pounds of fat in a week. So the scale can change more in a day than the true body fat can change in a week. So all you can do is track trend lines. Weigh yourself once a week or something, and make sure that on average you're losing weight week to week. But like Dave said, I won't even worry about weight. I would worry about you have today. You know that you're eating terrible. Eat better today, and you know today is a win. Eat good tomorrow, you know tomorrow's a win. And then maybe the next day is a loss, but rack up more wins than losses. And then eventually, because time's going to pass, in 5 years, it's going to be 5 years. And 5 years ago feels like yesterday. And in 5 years, today is going to feel like yesterday. And you can either be in the body fat range you want to be, lifting the totals you want to lift in 5 years, or you can be where you're at. And the way to decide that is make sure that as many days as possible are wins and as few days as possible are losses.
Yeah. The something else that reminded me is when I weighed myself, it was because for some reason you always had Monday being a low carb day. I always weighed myself on Tuesday morning. It was always after a low carb day because this is going to be the lightest I was always going to be, and it wasn't on any other day. So but I think your advice is better. Is just go for the wins every day, you know. And if you fuck up half a day, you know what? So what? Take half a win.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to just because, and I think people do this a lot, you know, they'll screw up a day and say, you know what, fuck it, I'm ordering pizza tonight. And they just make it worse.
All right, going back to the cheat meals. This guy said, do you find purpose in cheat meals? Guys like Branch Warren claim it's just an excuse to eat shitty food. Any real meaning behind them? Obviously, you said there was, but
yeah, well, it is an excuse to eat shitty food. I mean, I mean, I love Branch Warren, but I'm not. You think Branch Warren's been competing since '93, '92, '91? You think
he's hardcore.
But you think he's never had a cheat meal in 30 years? You know, I mean, you know, that's there's nothing magical about cheat meals. What's magical about cheat meals is that when you're starving and you're dying and your family hates you and you have no energy and you want nothing more than just to eat some garbage that you know is going to give you some mouth pleasure, and the idea that you can't for the next 4 months is pretty damn daunting. But knowing that I in 6 days, if I get one cheat meal a week, knowing that no matter how terrible this is, I only got to suffer for this for 6 days, and then I can go ahead and eat what I'm craving. And what that does is, like I said before, with the glycogen storage and placing the hypercaloric days on days when you know you're depleted and you know you can eat more calories than you burn and minimize the fat storage from those calories, having the cheat meal on that day is predictable. We understand what it's doing, and we know we're minimizing the negative effects of it, so that it's part of the diet. Where if we don't do that, and on this low carb day where this is our main fat burning day, we're low carb, we're killing it, we're doing a double cardio session, and this is our biggest fat burning day of the week, and you spaz out and go order half the menu off McDonald's on that day in an unplanned cheat meal. Now we went from our main fat burning day to a fat gain day, and that ruins a whole week. Where if we plan that cheat meal, and people aren't robots, and you know, and maybe some people can stick to it. No cheat meals for 16 weeks, but it's 3,500 calories for a pound of fat. If you're a large person and you're normally eating 800 calories in a meal, and we change that meal to a cheat meal and you eat 1,600 calories, which is a more likely cheat meal where you go and eat a bunch of burger and fries and have a beer or two, so you had 800 extra calories. So now So once a month you gain a pound of fat. So that cheat meal means over a 4-month period there's a maximum, and that's if you store none of that cheat meal. You store every gram of that cheat meal above what you normally would have ate as fat, which isn't going to happen. But even if, worst case scenario, 100% of those extra calories are stored only as fat in the body, you gain 4 pounds. It's a 4 pound of fat difference over a 4-month contest prep. 4 pounds, I don't think people realize how little 4 pounds looks. Take Ronnie Coleman on stage and add 4 pounds of fat on him, and he looks like Ronnie Coleman. That, you know, and so if that, and that's assuming in the perfect scenario where with no cheat meals. So that's absolute worst case. Every calorie of that cheat meal gets stored as fat, and not only that, when you don't have the cheat meal, you get none of the metabolic, or you don't lose any of the metabolic benefits. So taking absolute worst case scenario, it makes almost no difference of appearance on your stage. Now, if we don't do that and we say no cheat meals, and 3 times during prep that fat burning day turns into a fat storage day where you had the cheat meal that wasn't planned when you were supposed to be in a pure fat burning state all day, maybe you gain 6 pounds of fat. Now that's worse than having that cheat meal every week with just a few, which is one of those a month that was unplanned. So I think, I mean, people aren't robots, and there's no, all that matters on stage is that you look the best. There's no moral victory. No one pats you on the back or gives you a thumb up or a kiss on the cheek because you suffered more than someone else.
My experience with the cheat meal type thing is I purposely would not allow myself to have a cheat meal for at least 4 weeks, and I always kind of told myself I had enough glycogen build up to last a month that I didn't deserve it. But that was because I had to get my brain set to be able to do, I don't like fucking dieting. All right. So, and keep in mind, we're talking about dieting here. We're talking about like prep dieting. We're not talking about eating healthy type of stuff. That's and we probably should, you know, so we'll deviate. The next question we're going to ask the next question ourselves. But you got to be in a certain mental state to be able to do that. Where if I would have started every single time I tried to get lean with a cheat meal every week, it would have been a disaster. Yeah. It would have been horrible.
I guess I should say, I tend to, I really narrow my focus because I'm working with bodybuilders, and so I'm picturing someone who's been eating chicken and rice all off season. Or, you know, they're 12% body fat, looking to get down to 4%.
Yeah, I mean they're coming in at 20%. Yeah. You got a lot of glycogen to go before the replenish. But if we're just going to talk about, you know, eating clean or eating healthier to lose weight, A, you have to be in a calorie deficit. Mm-hmm. B, you should have some type of circulatory exercise in your program. And I'm not saying it has to be cardio, but it has to be enough that's pumping blood through your body to be able to push nutrients through your body. And you got to be compliant, and you got to make sure that the more than 50% is food that is nutrient dense. I think that would be my basic, if I was to talk to my aunt and say, look, how do you lose weight? Well, here, first off, just like you said earlier, just make better choices. Yeah. Don't sit here and tell me you're stupid. You know what I'm saying? People act like they're way dumber about nutrition than they are.
No, people know. People want to convince themselves that they don't know, but
they know.
Yeah. People know. There's, we go to any, what I used to say is, you know, sorry, this might even be off tangent, but off topic. But I used to tell people, go to a restaurant. Everyone has a hard time picking their meal. Most people, there might be 2 or 3 meals that you want to eat, and all 3 of them look like they'll taste equally as good. Start off by picking the one that you know is the healthiest of those 3 options. And the person that asked before, the 44% body fat, just doing that's going to get you moving in the right direction. You know, like, oh, that steak looks good, those ribs look good, and those, you know, fried fish looks good. Well, fried fish is terrible. The ribs are a ton of fat. The steak's much better. Choose the steak. You're still eating pretty damn good. You're having a nice juicy steak at a restaurant. Well, that's the best of those 3 options. That's a win, which what could have been a loss.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest takeaway from just basic weight loss. And
you don't need to eat health. I mean, you really don't. There's a big difference between health, the way you look, eating healthy food, and weight loss. And actually, if you judge, you have to decide what your markers for health are. If your marker for health is longevity, then all that really matters is calories. They got mice living to the human equivalent of 200 years, and all they're doing is starving them, getting them as close to dying from starvation as possible, and it just slows down every process in the body that they live a very, very long time. I'm sure my mom's not listening. No family listens to these things after the first minute or two. But for my wedding, I had my mom lose a lot of weight. We did a calorie cycling. I let her eat anything she wanted. She said she wanted to lose weight, but she would not eat healthy. She wanted to eat M&Ms. And so all we did was we gave her a calorie count. There was calorie count A, calorie count B, calorie count C. And they went up like that. And she went A, B, C, A, B, C, and just rotate, eating anything she wanted as long as she was within those calories. And she was, I mean, very thin. You would think she was someone, at my wedding, you would think she was, someone who worked out every day and ate super healthy.
It's not like where it becomes the challenge. And I think this is where the general public and powerlifters, or people who are just training because they love training, are trying to simulate. The challenge is when you're taking somebody who you're prepping them, and you actually want to try to add muscle to them while they're in a calorie deficit, all right, which is almost impossible. Yeah. But I believe it's possible.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because it absolutely is, and it's based on hormonal levels, androgen to estrogen levels. So in a case with rising androgens, that is possible, because you can have a localized case of protein synthesis. And the reason it's possible is because protein synthesis is very, very low calorie. If you can convert only 10 grams of protein a day, so 40 calories, that's nothing. So 40 calories a day of muscle, that's 10 pounds of muscle a year. So you can be in a pretty strong calorie deficit and have localized cases where, so I can convert 40 calories a day to muscle and still be in a huge calorie deficit. 40 calories is nothing on top of a 3,500 calorie diet. So.
Yep. And that's, for most though, they're just trying to maintain. It's like, look, I want to drop 30 pounds, but I want to maintain the same lean body mass, or, whatever it's going to be. And I think that people that, gym bros, like, that's what I want to do. It's like, listen, man, there's a lot of discipline, that goes into that, and take as much shit as you want. It still isn't gonna happen like that.
All right, this one, my son is 7 and wants to start lifting with me someday. At what age do you think it's okay to introduce weight training to him? When did Rambo come out? 1985. I was 6. I got a weight bench with the Weider plastic weights the Christmas after that. Got my first lat pull down and squat rack when I was 9. Now I want to say I wasn't, I don't think there's any, I don't know of any realistic scientific, I don't want to say realistic, I haven't seen any scientific study that showed there's any major negative effects to weight training for youth. I mean, you look at human culture, there's a same thing with political correctness. Women begin menstruating when they're quite young, and so from a genetic standpoint, that's when they're adults. That's when, and so if you take a 12-year-old boy and you think that you would worry he's not ready to lift weights because of growth happening, a couple thousand years ago, by that age, you were already battle scarred. So there's I don't think there's any. I mean, if there's problems with him injuring himself from poor form and things, but I don't think there's any risk of heavy weights. And find a national champion wrestler who wasn't already a stud wrestler on probably the national level by the time he was 7 years old. And that's some hard, intense training, hard, intense workouts. Go to like China and find their weightlifters who aren't already doing highly technical movements by 7, 8 years old. I mean, I wouldn't say go in and start trying to have a max out on squats, but I was in my basement, trying to do push-ups, trying to do whatever I thought would make me look like Arnold Schwarzenegger when I was 7 and 8 years old. And look at me, I'm awesome. But I'm 40. I don't have any joint replacements. I'm not short. I don't have any growth fusion or growth plate fusion. I don't have any. Dave might disagree with me on this, but I don't see. I mean, as long as the only risk is you're teaching him terrible form and him injuring himself. But other than that, he's probably playing peewee football and at far greater risk for injuring himself than just performing a bench press incorrectly.
No, I think they can train. I have 2 kids that grow up. I mean, they came into the gym and carried the handler basket things, So they've grown up in the gym, and one of them trains a couple days a week, and the other one doesn't train at all. I'm not going to force them, because this is going kind of way back to where we started, where you were talking about the gym has been such a big part of your life in so many different ways, that I want that gift for my kids, and I don't want to be the person that fucks that gift up.
Yeah, I gotcha.
You know, because I push them into something that could actually be very beneficial and help them. So I wait for them, you know, so they're teenagers, but I'm not going to force them, you know, to come out to train. But if they want to, then they will. But at some point in time, they may say, hey, look, I want to do, you know, I want to get serious about training for baseball. I'll be more than happy. Now, if he would have said that when he was 6, same thing. It's just now I would have worked things that are in the developmental process at that time, like visual acuity, balance, coordination, because there's certain physical components that are developed during certain ages of maturity as we grow, as we get better. Like coordination, if you don't, I think the age for that might be 5 to 8. I could be wrong. I'd have to look it up. But when you miss this window, it's not like you can't get better coordinated, but you're not going to be as coordinated as what you could have been. Visual acuity, your ability to take in, you know, things, a linebacker, quarterback, step back, see the whole field. That's developed before the age. I think that's another one that's developed before the age of 10, right? So if you're not doing drills to teach them that visual acuity, and this is one of those things where, you know, if I had more time, I would try to find studies to see what is the visual acuity of the kids that are playing video games on big screen TVs. Because is it better than what it was years later? Because look at what they're processing all at one time. Man. Holy shit. You know, that, what do you think a quarterback does when he steps back? You know, so is the video games really bad or are they not? You know,
I just read something, I don't think I read it. I saved something that was actually like an article, some research on that. I wish I would have read it.
You know, and the other thing that you just said, which sparked something, because I saw a video, the strongman Eddie Hall, right? Had he was on London Reel or something like that, and he was talking about Schwarzenegger was an idol of his because he saw, you know, growing up, he saw his shows, and then you just mentioned Rambo, and it's like, how many people do I know, you know, Meadows with, you know, Rocky and all this sort of stuff. How many people do we know in bodybuilding and powerlifting and sports in general that were inspired by movies or TV characters? All right. Almost everybody I fucking know.
Either that or like comic book characters. I don't think I can't think of anything else. That's like everyone.
Most media characters though, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, but why are we now today telling everybody don't watch TV?
Yeah.
Like, okay, now wait a minute. If all these people grew up, you know, and the people that they grew up admiring were fictitious characters. Okay, they were even bodybuilding, right? So you're flipping through the magazines, you're like, oh man, you know, Ronnie Coleman and, you know, Jay Cutler and all, you didn't know who the hell they were. The only thing that you knew about them is what the editors made you think they were. All right, so you're looking up to and aspiring to be like a fictional character that some journalist made up. So it's not even the real person. Right? But you're aspiring to be that. But so it kind of flips this whole social media is fucking up the world thing on its head, because now those people that you would be looking up to, you actually see who they actually really are by how they post. You know, so it's like, oh, this is, you know, this is Dexter Jackson. You know, maybe you want to be like it, maybe you don't. Now you know Dexter's a different Dexter Jackson on social media than he most certainly was in Flex magazine 10 years ago when there was no social media, because the writers determined who he was, what he ate, and how he trained. Now you know. So is it good? Is it bad? I mean,
that's
see, it's a weird conversation.
Well, that's really interesting. Well, I can think of like an analogy as because everyone said, yeah, the TV's bad, movies are bad. Like are we showing a bad body image to our kids? So, like I remember all the articles in the '80s when all the action stars looked like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like as an analogy, if you take a forest, and you say, a forest burns down, and that's terrible. All the wildlife, all the little, rabbits die. It burns down. There's a forest fire. What do you do? So let's prevent forest fires, right? That's terrible. But what happens if you completely prevent forest fires? The dead wood never burns off. So then if a fire actually does start, it burns through and destroys the entire forest, even the large trees, because trees have developed over, millions of years to withstand a certain level of fire and not die. They have a certain root depth, and so the fires that would happen naturally that we think are bad because animals are dying and it's burning down the trees, burns off that dead wood and allows the strong trees to survive. And so you can imagine the same thing. We say that must be bad, so let's prevent fires. But then what happens is something much worse happens when a fire actually does start later on. All that dead wood burns so hot that it destroys the entire forest. That's it's a poor analogy, but it's the same thing. We say the TV stuff and the media is so bad, but then what happens if we're wrong? And the alternative is much worse.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's yin and yang. Maybe there's good and bad to everything. Yeah. It's interesting though, because it's something that I've taken note of, because the whole TV thing just keeps coming up. I'm seeing both sides. It's like bad, and the social media is what it is. We can go in circles about that, because the thing with the social media is the person can create their own narrative, all right, true or false, where that can be seen as good, but Flex Magazine was creating the narrative of what a pro bodybuilder was, which was kind of good, because you're like, wow, this is cool. If I'm a pro bodybuilder, I'm going to make money. I'm going to be able to support my family. I'm going to drive a Lamborghini. And it's all bullshit. So they were creating false narrative, but still inspired a shit ton of people to be able to do it.
People who inspired a lot of people who now are driving Lamborghinis.
Yeah, so there's still false narrative, but there's also real people that...
Well, you say it, John Meadows, so by that falsehood, if he looked up to that, well, now he is the one who is making the money that Weeder was pretending the guys were making before. So maybe.
It's a crazy conversation that just goes in circles. What else we got? Because this is gonna get really weird really quick.
Speaking of weird, how did Justin approach the no-calorie barbecue sauce situation with Dave, and explain what that was?
It wasn't that. It was
not worth looking into.
No, I mean, basically what that was is. And it's me even before Justin, but Ronnie Coleman had the DVDs.
Oh yeah,
he's going fucking eating.
Chad Nichols has a funny story on that.
The fucking ribs and I'm like, fuck yeah, and I'm gonna eat that every day. So when I was on the road with Wendler one time, it's like, man, we got to go back. I got to have the ribs and the rice and the shit. And I was dieting, and Jim's like, this is not dieting. And he said, we don't have apps to look up calories and stuff. He said, there's no way that this is anywhere close. This is probably your calorie allowance for the whole day or 2 days. I'm like, nah, man, this fucking what Ronnie does, it's fine. I was wrong. Yeah.
Well, Chad Nichols said as soon as that Unbelievable came out, all his other clients were calling him the day it was released. What the hell? I don't get to eat barbecue sauce. He had to explain that. No, that's Ronnie Coleman. It doesn't count. He's he's not human.
Yeah, exactly.
So before you explain some of the common mistakes that you see with carb cycling, but can you explain what carb cycling is for some beginner that maybe has not heard of it?
Well, it's basically just a way to rotate calories. I mean, there's a certain level. So. You need to go eat less calories than you burn to lose weight. The problem is when you eat less calories than you burn, it increases your hunger hormones, it makes you hungrier, and it eventually slows down your metabolism. And so what you do is, you can look at it as just from a calorie standpoint as, I'm on camera, right? My calories are here. If I eat here, I don't lose any weight. So if I eat calories here, I'll lose a little bit of weight. So now let's say that's your most of your days are right here. So you're losing that little bit of weight. Now let's say a couple days a week, we're going to go way down here. You're going to lose a lot of fat those days. The problem is that your basal metabolism is going to start dropping. So what do? Before it can catch up and start dropping, we bring the calories way back up here and it resets it. And you can look at it from an evolutionary standpoint. Your body, so say if anytime we ate less calories, it's because there was a famine. So your body thinks, oh, I'm not getting enough calories. There must not be any woolly mammoths to kill. We better slow our metabolism down so we don't die. So what the high carb day does is basically say, okay, right as the body's starting to say, hey, we haven't ate very much, so we need to start fixing some things. Are there no animals to kill? Then we put that high carb day in, and the body says, oh, okay, there's a bunch of animals to kill. We must have just been lazy. We don't have to slow our metabolism down. So that's kind of the long and short of it.
Okay. How does your training differ between when you started, when you were at your peak, and how you train currently?
When I started, it was all for football. I trained with a guy, Mike Hickey, and we read the magazines. Actually, he won it because he felt like it would hold him back. He didn't want to know. He didn't like knowing that you weren't supposed to do certain things. He just thought if he believed something and he read the opposite, he wouldn't believe it anymore, and he didn't want that. And actually, he progressed faster than me, so I kind of liked his approach. But we didn't know anything about it. I remember we found someone who played at U of M or something, gave us their training program, and I remember it was like cleans, hang cleans, squats, a lot of squats. And then the only thing I remember is the only thing you did once a week, you did 4 sets of lat pull downs. That was the only back workout, no deadlifts or anything. So my training up until about age 21 was, it got more bodybuilding style, but it was all for football. Then after that, it was straight bodybuilding till about 2005, and then it was kind of a hybrid DC type approach to like 2008, and then 2007 to 2008, it was almost powerlifting. It was still trying to look like a bodybuilder, but I really trained as close as I ever did to straight powerlifting. And then today I don't know, try to enjoy myself in the gym.
Okay. Is there any difference in your nutrition coaching for your female clients versus your male clients?
No, they have human bodies still, so it's lower calories, but it's not that much different. And then people might say, well, we need to eat less protein. And I don't think people realize how little the protein you eat actually gets used as protein. We talked about a little bit earlier that even 10 grams of protein a day turning into new muscle is 10 pounds a year. So if you're eating 300 grams of protein, that means only 10 grams of it is actually being, and it's less than that, because who adds 10 pounds of muscle every year? I've been training since I was 7. I haven't added, 700 pounds of muscle. So I'm using much less than 10 grams a day. So then you need a certain amount at each meal, but it's not like there's dramatic difference between, it's all just calories. The proportions are roughly the same. The women and it's unfortunate for women because they have to eat far less calories. And so it's a hard, for me, if I'm eating 6,000 calories a day, I can eat 3,000 calories a day and lose almost a pound of fat a day and still be eating 3,000 calories a day. For a woman with who hasn't built her metabolism, she's got a basal metabolic rate of 1,500 calories a day. To lose a pound of fat a week, she's only eating 1,000 calories a day, which is starving. So they have a much harder time that way.
Okay. Dave, can you elaborate on the bloat game? How did you and other guys do it? When would you start? Was there any progression? And was it really worth doing? And if so, how much did it help? Also, did anyone actually shit themselves when they got under the bar while bloated? Serious question.
I've never seen anybody shit themselves when they were squatting, so I can say that. But keep in mind, I'm coming from the powerlifting background, so we're singles. I'm sure if somebody was doing a heavy set of 10, and they fart or blow ass, it can end up all over the gym, but I've never seen that. Now, the bloating principle, I got to go through different generations here because of the gear as far as what we wore to compete with. When it was single ply gear, the bloating helped a lot because it made the gear tighter and it helped with more rebound, because especially for me, because I had a really hard time gaining weight and I was in a 308 class. So I had to stay training. I needed to train at a 292 weight. And if I ever hit 285, that was panic mode. So off season wise, I could never let myself get under 280, or I knew I would never be able to get at 292. I knew I could be able to push myself to 312. So hit 308 and then hit 312. As long as I stayed in that 292 range with what I knew at the time. I learned some stuff from Justin later, which would have made things a hell of a lot easier. But it made the suit, it made the equipment tighter, which gave more rebound. It also put more fluid around my joints, which gave more protection to the joints. I just had to be very cautious, and this I knew even before coming from Westside, is where was the water going? You know, was it going in the muscle or was it going between the muscle and the skin? Because if it was going between the muscle and the skin, with the single ply gear, it was a problem because it was just gushy. You know, it wasn't doing anything more except squishing my water retention. It was just pushing the water retention. It wasn't getting into the muscle at all. So that's how it impacted it with a single ply. When things got into multi-ply and it got crazy, if you over bloated, you weren't going to make depth in your squat suit. There was just no way in hell, because so you had to know pretty much. I had to be between 308 and 312 with when I was using the canvas. If I was 315, there was no way in hell I was going to get anything past. And even the 312 is, you know, getting a parallel squat past with the hip joint being parallel to the knee. I did not say the crease of the hip joint being parallel to the knee. Bench shirts were a little bit trickier because you wanted to be, the gushier you were, or the more water you could hold between the muscle and the skin, the better the shirt could work, because it allowed more movement for the shirt. The harder you were, like if somebody was super, like when Justin competed, he probably had a hell of a time getting a lot out of his shirt because he was lean and hard. So the shirt's a pain in the ass because it's not compressing into the water to be able to provide, because the shirt comes from the tricep pushing. So this is stabilized to allow the shirt to push through. So that was kind of the compromise there. So the shirt was just had to be dialed in well. So where I've learned the mistakes, because at one meet I over bloated. I actually weighed in at 275 and ended up at 305, which was a 2-day weigh-in. I couldn't get I couldn't get a squat. I mean, actually no, I did get a squat in, but I couldn't get my bench shirt on, and I had torn my pec 2 weeks prior to that. So, you know, I benched the bar, and then some stupid reason I couldn't pull because the pec was cramping or whatever it was. But anyhow, that was a worthless meet because it was a stupid move. So now with this as well, I practiced it. Keep in mind, I'm not at the top of my weight class. So I'm training at 292 as a 308. And that wasn't because I wasn't trying. It just wasn't happening. I would experiment 6 weeks out with different bloating protocols. And, you know, I'll go on the record and say I used a anti-inflammatory called phenobutyral, which, you know, helps retain water. Now, this is not something you want to take all the time. It's why it's for horses and not for humans. You take it for 4 days, get the fuck off of it, and don't use it again, hopefully for a year. Or my advice is to never use it ever, and just keep it that way, because I'm not a doctor and I'm definitely not a veterinarian. But I would the last 4 squat sessions leading up to the meet, I would run my protocol in about 80% to be able to know where I would end up if I went full tilt. Because when I went full tilt, the other thing I'm leaving out there is I did a small band workout after weigh-ins while I was loading, you know, trying to get bloated, to get the fluid into the muscle. Because if all you do is hit the IVs and then just eat a bunch of, you know, sodium and fluids and stuff like that, I'm going to guarantee you're going to press your fingers against your skin and it's going to be white for 2 minutes. You're going to have nothing in your muscle at all. You have to train the muscle to be able to have it in there, and you have to have some degree of sodium. Now, with Justin, just for shits and giggles, because I thought this was going to be funny, and it actually was. It wasn't as funny as I thought it was going to be, but it was funny as fuck to me. I did a seminar for Murph, Total Performance Sports in Boston, and the year I did it was when I went down there. I was lean. I mean, I was about 2 weeks out from us stopping the diet. So I was like 242. I'm doing 2 hours of cardio, and he doesn't have people do a lot of cardio. So this was max cardio for Justin. So it was definitely towards the end, but I'm riding a goddamn bike while the seminar's going on, and I'm carrying my meals with me everywhere I go. And, you know, post workout, a little pack of Skittles, you know, it's just, so I'm 100% bodybuilder in a powerlifting environment. So of course they're all making fun of me, especially DeCenzio, just ripping my ass apart, him and Rhodes. So then the next year I'm not speaking, but I'm like, I'm going to go up there. And then about a week out, I'm like, you know what? I'm about 280 right now. I'm going to go up there as bloated as fuck. I'm going to go up there more bloated than any of these guys. So I get a hold of Justin and say, look, I want to get super bloated. I mean, and he's like, for what? I'm like, just for looks, man. There's no performance. There's no performance thing here. This is just for looks. I want to walk up there where all the attendants the year prior saw me with like a sucked in face, 240 pounds, tan, and now I'm going to go up there white wearing a Harley Davidson t-shirt, and I wanted to be over 300 pounds. So he lays out, here's the bloat protocol, you know, the super protocol, which, can I tell people what the super protocol was?
Yeah.
I mean, at the time it was like, don't tell anybody about this because this is like secret shit, you know. And but it was 2 packs of ramen noodles, salted, you know, every 2 hours with we didn't use G2. It was Gatorade watered down, cut in half. So it's basically G2 is supposed to be Gatorade cut in half, but it really isn't. It's easier. And I learned this even before Justin. It's easier to cut your own and don't use the powder and just slam as much of that as you possibly can.
The reason is because at the full strength, the water will pool in your stomach. If you cut it to half strength, it's got a low enough osmolarity that it won't pool in your stomach, so you don't get bloated from it. It goes just like water, but it's still getting you sugar and electrolytes.
Yeah. So that's basically those were my meals. It was like that every 2 hours. Then in between meals, salt and vinegar potato chips, which I don't know why the fuck salt and vinegar potato chips, but it worked, you know. And so actually, I was late in asking him because it would have worked better had I depleted for 2 days beforehand, then hit it. But I went from whatever the hell I was, 282 to 315. By the time I got there, but I used phenobuterol as well. So
I thought we used vasopressin, desmopressin also.
We used that too. Yeah. You know, so so it's, yeah, I walked in there a cow. You know, there was no doubt about it. And I wouldn't suggest that. You know, it's even for a raw powerlifter today. I think making sure that you're very glycogen full is important. You need to make sure that you are very hydrated and you're hydrated in the right spots. And I think a lot of people, after they weigh in, they'll make a mistake of, and now there's centers where you can bag up. You know, you got to weigh in and you got to go. It depends upon how much you cut. You need to weigh in. You need to get the IVs. You need to get fluid back into your body, 100% for sure. And the only way you can do it 100% for sure is to put it directly into the vein. So I've typically gone, you know, one bag, 10 pounds. So that's a safe range. And, you know, keep in mind when I had to do this shit, we didn't have centers you could go to. You know, you got hotel rooms with blood splatter all over the wall because nobody can figure out where to put the needle in the arm. But get that first, and you can sip on the Gatorade mixture while you're doing that. But no food. You know, you get that in there. And I use the finger test. You know, always press the arm and see what's going on with the color. Of course, there's going to be water that's going to gain between your muscle and your skin, but it should be later in the day. You know,
There's an actual analytical metric you can do. I mean, rather than the finger test, check your blood sugar. If your blood sugar is climbing, you're hyponatremic, meaning you don't have enough sodium to take the sugar up into the muscles, and at that point the water's going to start going under your skin rather than into the muscle, and so you can fix that by adding more sodium usually.
Yeah,
so
that's way better. Because the sodium that's the other factor, because that's the other thing everybody forgets, because they just assume they're eating pizza and it has sodium. Yes, it does, but without the sodium, Justin kind of said it earlier, you want the glycogen to go into the muscle. All right, you need sodium and you need water to push it into the muscle. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with fluid floating around, between the skin and the muscle, which is going to do you absolutely no good. It's going to fuck your leverages up. It's going to screw everything up. And the final component of all this is, while it's funny and it's a good story to tell and all that, it's not going to be what's going to be the difference between you being first or second. Guaranteed. Nobody's going to go into a meet dehydrated. If you do, your coach sucks and you suck. You should know better than that. If you're cutting weight, make sure you're working with somebody who knows how to put the weight back on. That's vital, especially if you're doing a cut that's more than a hot shower the night before. Make sure and I'm going to stress that critically. You hire somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing.
That can be life. I mean, that can literally be life or death when you're cutting 10% of your body weight or something.
Yes, Janae did some
260 to 220.
Yes, she's lucky she's not dead.
Yeah.
The things that you don't want to do the things that she did. It was stupid as fuck. Where there's so many easier ways, to go about doing it. Especially if you can use injectable Lasix.
Well, that's the thing. She had like same with the knee wraps. She had the thing she was against using diuretics, which makes it so much easier and safer.
Yep. And if it is a diuretic route, obviously your doctor should know what you're doing. I got to put that out there.
Yeah, and then and people are rolling their eyes, but find a doctor that lets you know what they're doing and accepts it. And I think that's an important thing that doesn't get talked about enough. Not all most doctors are jerks about it and don't understand it, but there are doctors who will try to understand. And if your doctor doesn't, find a new doctor and keep finding doctors until you find one that you can talk to about it. And he'll tell you you're an idiot and he'll tell you you're going to die, but he'll help you find ways to make sure that risk is minimized rather than just tell you and shove you on your way.
Yes. And even before, hell, even with Serrano, I had to, I don't want to say prove myself, but you can't be a fucking meathead when you're going in to see a doctor. And I can't stress this, enough, because as you get older, you're going to be seeing doctors more frequently. Sorry, it just kind of comes with age. And if you've had any history of anabolic abuse, any issue that you have is going to be because of that. So you have to have, and I'm not saying that's true, I'm saying that's what they're going to tell you. So if you build a relationship with your general practitioner over a period of time, like get a regular physical, for Christ's sake. I mean, that's one way to, and then they know what you're doing, and you can have conversations with them about, hey, look, I'm going to cut for this meet, I'm going to use a diuretic. It's what, I know you're not going to agree with it, but I'm pretty sure, an injectable diuretic is going to be far better than an oral diuretic. But, what are your thoughts? He's going to tell you you're stupid. And like Justin said, you need to know the guy first, a couple year rapport.
Yeah, and then he can say, you're stupid, but let's make sure you're not going hypokalemic from the Lasix. Then he can check those things.
Yes.
So.
And if you built the relationship over 3 years or whatever it's going to be, he may ask you to come in to give you the injection.
Yeah.
He's going to make sure there's potassium and and you may have to come back. I mean, he's going to make sure you're not going to die. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to tell you you're going to go into a doctor and say, I'm going to cut weight for this meet, they're not going to do it. Same thing with testosterone or anything else. They're just not going to do it. But somebody medically should know, if you're taking a diuretic for anything, because you can die. It's kind of like diuretics and insulin. If you're going to deal with any of those two things and you don't have somebody medically that knows what you're doing, then you're slowly risking. It's like bullet in the chamber, man. It's just
Russian roulette.
Yeah, Russian roulette.
All right, I got a good one to end on here. Thoughts on gaining strength, not muscle, while dieting down?
Well,
maybe more so maintaining, but if they worded it gaining.
Well, I mean, if done properly, you shouldn't lose. And you don't need to lose muscle when you're dieting. We've already talked about how if everything's perfect, you can potentially gain muscle while dieting, and so the tissue is still there. The problem is what's your measure of strength, because you're losing leverages, you're losing biomechanical advantages. Your form is changing, your groove is changing, you have less fluid around the joints, and so your gym strength might decline in some proportion with the way your weight drops, but as a real obvious short-term example, you can take like Janae at 260 has a certain level of strength. Janae at 220 does not have that level of strength, but rebounding back up to 260 means that strength in 36 hours comes back. And so it's the same thing in a longer term when you're dieting. If you're dieting down to make a weight class and you're in a calorie deficit and you're carb depleted and you're glycogen depleted and you're dehydrated because you're not eating any carbohydrates, then you might have a decrease in gym strength. That doesn't mean your potential for strength is there. It doesn't mean the contractile tissue has lost strength. It means that your leverages are different. Your joint's not as tight. You don't have the fluid around the joint. And so that means that your strength can be the same or even higher, within a day or two of replacing those carbohydrates. And so, yeah, I mean, I would focus. I think if you're trying to gain strength while trying to diet, you're trying to kill two birds with one stone. I would focus on getting stronger, and then if you want to make weight for meat or want to diet down to look good, I would worry about dieting down. And if you do it properly, you won't lose the muscle tissue won't get smaller, which means the muscle tissue won't get weaker. You may be weaker while you're depleted of glycogen and low in carbohydrates, but that'll come back as soon as you replenish those.
I would answer, because this is kind of the age-old question, is how do I lose weight and get stronger? It's the same question. It's along the same lines of, I do everything but can't gain weight. Yeah. It's like the same type of question. Is the answer that I would have to that is prioritize your objectives. All right, so you want to lose weight and you want to get stronger. So which one's more important? Getting stronger or losing weight? If you can't answer me, then you're not committed to either one of them. All right, so commit to which one it is first. If you want to get stronger, okay, focus on getting stronger without gaining weight, and just do that. Try to hold the weight while you're there. All right, if it is you want to lose weight, then lose weight and don't worry about your fucking strength. Get down to either your weight class. If you're a beginner, I think you should get down to your weight class so you don't have to cut. If you're more advanced and you know how to cut and you can do it without inhibiting your performance, get down to where you need to be in striking range to be able to cut. And then focus more. You're still going to train either way. It's just, where's your main focus and priority going to be? When you start trying to split focus and priority in any strength sport, you're minimizing your potential of success on whatever you're doing. That's why certain protocols like block periodization exist. That's why even with basic linear periodization, which is progressive overload, that's why that exists through a strength phase, a power phase, a peak phase, and a hypertrophy phase. All right, that's why sports have preseason, off-season, time off, so you can prioritize on specific things at specific times. You know, conjugate, yes, that's when you're trying to do a lot of things at the same time. Okay, and I'm a conjugate fan. I think that's great. It's a great form of training. But now you want to have a conjugate diet. You know, you want to throw that in there, and it's too much. So focus on the priority and hit that first, you know. And it's weird because most people are going to tell you cut the weight slow, you know, bring it down so you can maintain muscle. But I also want to throw out, go listen to the conversation I had with J.M. Blakely, who was notorious for dropping 100 pounds on competing in 4 weight classes and then going back up in the same year. His answer floored me when I asked him, how much did you try to lose at any given time? And he said as much as he possibly could. His record was 28 pounds in 3 weeks. He said he wanted to get it down, get it off, and then start training, and then worry about it then. So I don't know if I agree with that philosophy, but it's putting I guess I do, because it's putting that objective is first, and then the strength is being the second.
Well, I mean, you can I was trying to think of an analogy to do it, but it's like kind of like saying, you know, how do I run 10 miles and bike 10 miles? Well, you could try to, I don't know, you could try to carry the bike on your back for 20 miles and say, hey, I ran 20 miles with the bike. You know, that's 10 and 10. Or it's going to be much slower because you're not doing either one efficiently. Or you could run 10 miles, then get on a bike and bike 10 miles. At the end of the day, you both went 20 miles. Now, you could say while you were running, you weren't biking, so how am I making any progress? Well, the problem is you know, because the progress is much quicker when you break them up into 2 separate things. So you can diet down and then work on your strength, and you think, well, while I'm dieting down, I'm not working on my strength. But if you're looking at the end result, dieting down first, getting the weight off, and then working on your strength means at the end of the day, at the end of the time period, your strength is going to be better than if you're trying to keep your strength while trying to diet off, and you're not doing either one efficiently.
I think it's good just to kind of face back and treat yourself like close to a natural athlete, so you can appreciate the diet and the training modalities and you know, rhythm and volume and intensity again, because when you're on, you kind of lose touch with that. You know, or at least a lot of athletes unless they're under good guidance of a coach. And even then, they have the coach to guide them, because themselves, it's very hard to do it yourself.